Dudes, what up? Sorry that I missed a week. I'm back in action, kinda, sorta, not really, almost. What's going on? Uh, my, I don't know what you call it, second appearance of of a guest I had on before, Mr. Josh. Oh my gosh, man, that dude. So he messaged me a couple of weeks ago, and maybe it was a week ago. No, it was a couple weeks ago, and he goes, "Hey, bro, I'm gonna tell you a documentary, and you just gotta watch it." So I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'll be whatever you want, dude. I'll watch whatever. I'm all in." So he ends up telling me to watch this documentary called uh, "Walking with the Tall Whites." And you know what? Just to be on the safe side, let me look this up. Walking with the Tall Whites. And I didn't know what to make of it. I didn't know. I was like, okay, yeah, cool. And I thought it was a Ken Burns documentary or something. I was like, oh, dude, I can't get into stuff like that. Just kidding. I was like, all right, yeah, I'll check it out. And it wasn't free at the time, but then I ended up looking it up on Amazon Prime, and it was there. It was there for stream, and I was like, oh shoot, okay. And my girlfriend came over and we watched it, and no spoilers or anything like that. You'll hear us talk about it. And there's even a point where it's like, if you want to watch it, I would highly suggest watching that documentary before listening to this episode. Walking with the Tall Whites. It's on Amazon Prime. Do not look at the ratings. The ratings mean absolutely nothing. It was a great documentary, and I'm just going to kind of set it up for you guys just a little bit, because I went in with total confusion. I had no idea, didn't read up on it, nothing. I just this is all off of Josh's recommendation. So I think it doesn't have that great of a review on Amazon, but the reason why I really enjoyed it, and it has nothing to do with like somebody. I mean, if somebody recommends something to me, and if it's bad, oh, I'm gonna light them up for it. But I ended up I really enjoyed it because the only two people, and there's no spoilers, but the only two people that get interviewed is Charles James Hall and his wife Marie. That's it. There's no like people that he was in the military with, like, yeah, he was kind of a weirdo when we were in line. Da, da, da. No, nothing like that. No newspaper clippings or like in other news. Da, 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 da. Yeah, so it was done really well. Charles James Hall was being interviewed the entire time, and he was like in kind of random locations. He'd be like outside, or he'd be like in his living room, and I just really enjoyed it. I just thought it was it freaked me out a little bit because his story was so convincing, and it was so intense. And I really don't want to give anything away, but I was definitely confused. He has a great like David Attenborough voice. But the thing is, like with David Attenborough, I mean, you're seeing these like beautiful like what's the word? Pick a video of like animals and nature and everything, visuals, right? And it's like, oh, it's just so it just looks so good that you just like don't want to look away. But with this guy, when he's telling you these stories, I'm not gonna lie, it has nothing to do with it being boring, because it 100% wasn't. I was just his voice was so soothing that I would fall asleep. And then my girl, like during like part of the documentary I'm watching, and she's like, babe, are you falling asleep? I'm like, no, that's crazy. Well, I was like, what's the last thing you talk about? He goes, the planets. I don't know. I really don't. She's just, you're falling asleep, and I'm like, no, I'm good. It's crazy. This guy's really doing it, and it's nothing to do with it being boring. Please watch it. Enjoy this episode. Josh is just like, this guy's a madman. Honestly, he's so passionate about UFOs and all that good stuff, man. And I just really enjoy talking to him. And he's actually in Joshua Tree, which was pretty cool. And I apologize for the sound. I'm not sure. He was telling me he was using a solar powered router, and he was talking to me at night. No idea how that was working out. No idea. So I ended up sending him a USB powered George Foreman grill, just to kind of put it next to the was a solar powered Wi-Fi router. Come on, bro. No, he didn't. Did he have that? Is that why I was cutting out a little bit? I don't know. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I had a freaking blast talking to him, and I will see you guys in the Cinco Zone. Yeah, dude, I've been good. Just been busy, man. Busy. Yeah, just work has just been crazy, and it got to the point where, like, dude, Alicia was like, I think you need to take some time off, because, dude, like, ever since the whole pandemic started, like, I was off for 2 days. Like, they sent us home. They were like, all right, everyone go home, and we'll let you know when we, if we're going to bring you back or not, like, to come back to work. And I was like, oh, okay. So I remember going to my manager, and I was like, hey, man, I shouldn't call her man. It's actually a lady. I was like, hey, look, I only have like 4 or 5 books at home. I'm going to run through them, and then I'm going to be bored. If you guys need me to come in, limited people. And she was like, yeah, okay, cool. I'll tell the owners. And, dude, they brought me back like 2 days later.
Right.
And, dude, I've been working ever since. I'm like so thankful for it. But,
Right.
dude, I haven't taken a break. Dude, even when I was in Utah, I was so stressed out just because it had to do with work, and I wasn't in my comfort zone. And, but, yeah, dude, ever since then, ever since the whole pandemic, ever since it started, it's just been work nonstop. So Lisa's like, I think you need to take some time off. I'm like, I think you're right. I need to go do something.
What did you do?
Nothing. I haven't done anything yet. No,
You still planning? You haven't chosen yet?
No, dude. And here's the bad part is, like, my work was like, I asked, I was like, hey, can I take some time off? And then they're like, June is incredibly busy. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right. And one guy leaves on vacation, and it's like, oh god. So I'm probably gonna shoot for July and do something.
Okay.
I want to go to LA, man. I really do. Like, I don't know if you listen to my solo, but like I told I'm telling myself. I said I was gonna go to Tito's Tacos because I always hated on that place. Have you been there? Have you been there before? Have you been to Tito's?
I've had to. Maybe I haven't though. Wait, what street is it on?
It's over in Culver City. I think it's on oh my gosh, what's the big Sepulveda? It's on Sepulveda.
Okay, no.
Yeah.
I haven't been there.
It's like the biggest street in LA.
Well, why did you hate on? Why do you hate on it?
Because, dude, when I first came to LA, dude, everyone was like, you got to go to Tito's. It's the best. And I was like, oh, dang. Dude, Hispanics. Like Cindy was one of the ones like, you got to go to Tito's. Like, everyone was telling, I was like, oh, okay. And, dude, I remember my buddy that lived down there already. His name was Rob. Dude, he goes, hey, I want to come over with some Tito's tacos. I'm like, oh my god, finally! Because I remember I was like, let's go to Tito's right when I got to LA, and dude, there was a line that just wrapped around the building. I was like, let's go to Johnny Pastrami instead. It was like right next door.
Let's go to Taco Bell. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. No, I couldn't do that. But do you know what's crazy? Is there's a Johnny Pastrami's in Culver City, and then right next door is a Cinco's Tacos or something like that. It's really.
Did you go there?
Oh yeah, dude, I would go there all the time. But what ended up happening was, dude, so my buddy Rob was like, hey, I want to go pick up Tito's. I'm like, yeah, good luck, dude. So he goes over there, waits in line, comes back, and he brought it over. And dude, I was so pumped. I was like, I can't wait to try these. And dude, it was just like, it wasn't good, man. It was like I don't know, like I was expecting like something authentic, or I don't know what I thought I was expecting.
Right.
But yeah, dude, it just wasn't that good. And it's no hate, but it was just like, I don't know if it took a long time just because it got warm or cold or whatever. But yeah, it just wasn't good. And ever since then, I hate it. And I was like, this place is freaking garbage and da da da. But I want to give it another shot because I mean, dude, the line's always outside the door, right? So, but there's a place, dude. There's a place like that up here, and it's called Taco Bravo. Dude, it is
Hmm.
so bad. Here's the thing. Everyone's always like, dude, you got to go there drunk. And it's like, no, man. Like I need to be sober in order to like see
Right,
how they're
right.
prepping it cuz dude, it's bad. You'll be like, dude, these
Mm.
guys are making my food. It's
Right, right,
like something out of Breaking Bad, dude. Like these characters that are in there.
right.
I feel bad. Now I'm
Yeah,
just
that's the thing. I mean, you got like, there's you really can't judge based on lines, honestly, in LA
no.
because you got things that I hate and have tried plenty of times, and you blame yourself the first 10 times,
Yeah.
and by the 20th time you're like, dude, it's not me. It's I just don't like it. And like In and Out, right? Any other place
Oh, wait a minute.
like
Wait.
I'm not an In and Out guy.
Oh,
I've
wow.
tried it 20 times.
Oh my
Don't
god,
like it.
I've
I
met
haven't.
one. Wow, you're the one. That's awesome.
Yeah, I am the one, bro.
You're the
I,
one.
I I
Wow.
tried, bro. I tried. There's all these places that are a lot of times. Some of them are still fast food, but they shut down all of their franchises in other parts of the country. And
Right.
the last places you got are here, like Carl's Jr. is on the East Coast, called them I think Hardee's, but places people come here and they're like, dude, I want to try it, or they came out here once and they tried it and it is cool, but you can't judge by the line. Sometimes there's places that I go to that have no line, and I'm glad because whenever I want to go there, I can go there and nobody knows
Yeah.
it's a secret.
Yeah,
That's
it's
how it is.
right. Dude, that you know what's crazy is I kind of got burnt out of In and Out cuz dude, when I was in Utah, dude, I didn't want to
Uh huh.
explore. I have this fear.
Hmm.
There's a couple of things that I fear. One is missing a flight.
Mm.
Dude, that's like my biggest fear, dude. I don't ever want to miss a flight ever, especially for work. And then the other one is
Right.
like getting food poisoning when I know I have to go and work somewhere.
Right.
So, dude, like seriously, dude, like people are like, dude, let's go to this freaking,
Yeah.
whatever it is, like whoever I'm working with. Dude, they were like, dude, I'm gonna get the hamburger with milk and cheese, and I'm like, what the hell? And it's like
Right.
something that's just gonna disrupt them,
Right.
right? And they're gonna be like, oh no, I can't work tomorrow. It's like, dude, I've gotten that
Right.
before, but dude, I kept going to In and Out, and like the places in Utah, they close early, and dude, I would like
Hmm.
it was like a 25-minute drive from where I was at to get to Whole Foods. So dude, like I was like, oh man, I can't make it. So then I would go to In and Out, and dude, I just got burnt out. And what happened was I ended up getting the double double. I think it's number one. And dude, it wrecked me. Like I didn't want to work anymore. I was like, damn, I just want to go take a nap. So then I was like, all right, I'm just gonna do number two. And I was like, dude, the cheese is messing me up. And I was like, you know what? I'm just sticking to frickin' just a hamburger, and I'm gonna do a lettuce wrap or something. Because dude, it just that
Hmm.
bread just weighs you down, man. It's rough.
And I also, I think also we're getting older, bro. We're getting older. And as we get older, our
Yeah.
body does not want that stuff anymore. And I mean, we did it 10, 15 years, right? Or longer, and
Yeah.
my body is really demanding that I become more health conscious, and which of course I've done. But, as also something I saw, I remember reading something on the news and it was like, dude, by the time you're, 30, 32, you're going to have something, right?
Oh yeah.
you're not going to be the perfectly healthy person. You're going to have some sort of condition that you're going to have to monitor. You're going to have to go to the doctor, get it checked up on. So as 35 is creeping up on me, uh, I don't react well to food, right? Like unless it's like unless it's just like a lettuce from the ground, I don't react well to food. So I'm like very,
Wow.
very picky now. And burgers. I don't know the last time I've maybe had a burger, but worst case, if you're like you said in the middle of nowhere and you just gotta eat, you gotta eat. But if I have the chance to slow down, I'm cooking a lot more.
That's
As you,
good.
you probably saw it posting a bunch of stuff about what I'm cooking because it tastes better, right?
Hmm.
Right? Nothing tastes better than once you get in there and do it yourself. But overall, meal planning out for 5 days, like you said, you won't burn yourself out. Food can burn you out just as bad as the work itself can. And if you don't have, especially in the work we do, which is extremely demanding, and
Yeah.
a lot of this stuff you do, I do also, right? I,
No,
I
right.
wear multiple hats, and I get burned out quick if I don't manage my time, my energy, and I don't communicate to my team the work that I'm doing in a way that I can manage. I have to tell them like, hey, we've got these three major projects going on. I'm going to be focusing on this. You're not going to see a lot of reporting on this. And that sounds easy, right, to say. But
Yeah.
when you have different departments, they're all demanding, not necessarily demanding in a bad way, but they all need things. And your team is responsible for that network infrastructure. You have to be able to say, "Hey, we're prioritizing this. We're a small team. There's about 6 of us,
Wow.
and we have to." And with our different skill sets and the wide set of skills, you know what it's like, bro. You got people who are good at servers, right? You have people that are good with Windows. Some are good with Linux.
Yeah.
Some are good with, Cisco. I'm from the Cisco side. Some are good with cabling, right? I'm also from the cabling side. Rack and stacks. If that's, all these different myriad of skills, you can get burned out quick if you
Oh,
don't
dude.
communicate to your team.
Yeah.
And the main thing is I want to be able to come home and just be, somebody that's still got energy to be at home rather than just going home and shutting down and closing the blinds and that's it. You got to be able to manage because you notice like you like, dude, I wanted to come into this industry to be able to have access to some of the better things in life,
Yeah.
right? So I don't have to work 16-hour shifts like I did when I was like working at Disneyland when I was 19. Then it was much more durable, but now you find me in the hospital if I try to do that today. But getting burned out is all about managing time, managing your food, and just your peace all around. And as we talk, and the reason why I'm mentioning this because we talk daily, right? We check on each other
Oh,
just
yeah.
to see how we're doing, and we're always talking about sort of pretty much the same thing because of the same sort of work schedule, same sort of life at home. You're trying to manage all those things, your own hobbies that you want to have. Of course, what we're talking about today is like my own hobby.
Yeah.
Managing all those things can be real tough when you're out of it. And yeah, I hear what you're saying, and it's good. And that's why I wanted to take a minute just to talk to you. And that's for people who are like listening and they're like, dude, what are they talking about? It's like we don't get a lot of time just to hash it out and talk
Yeah.
about the things verbally that we talk about, in Messenger.
Right. Right. And dude, you know what's crazy is like Mark hit me up and
Hmm.
he was like, yeah, he always messes around. He's like, hey, didn't see a new episode yet. And dude, I hate to say it, and to me, it's an excuse because I follow this other person, this
Hmm.
that Devin recommended. His name's Retro Nintendo. I think it's Retro Nintendo. I think I'm saying that right. I gotta look it up to.
I think I watched that.
Do you know what I'm talking about? The Twitch. He like opens up Pokemon cards, and dude, I get notifications all the time saying like, hey, I'm on Twitch. I'm on Twitch every single day. But not only
Hmm.
that, he also works and he's married and he has a
Right.
kid. But he's so passionate. He's so passionate about it. And
Right.
dude, it's hats off to him, man. I don't know how he does it, but it's like what you said. You gotta prioritize your time. But dude,
Right.
I just got so burnt out over the last like few months that it's like,
Hmm.
I couldn't even think about. Oh, okay, and you know what? Here, I'm gonna also say another thing, dude. Alicia's friend came over, maybe a month and a half ago. She came over and they were watching the show called Bridgerton. Have you seen that?
Hmm.
Have you seen that?
I've heard about it.
Okay.
Everybody's talking about it. I haven't
Every
seen it, but everybody's talking
bro,
about it. Yeah.
everyone's talking about it. Dude, every time I walk in, there's always like a sex scene happening. I'm like, geez, what the heck's going? What are you guys watching? What is it? Anyway, uh, dude, she came over and I was like, all right, I want to record a solo, this and that. I want to talk about stuff that I want to do with the show, this and that, this and that. Dude, I started going off, and then, dude, I just like hit a wall. Dude, I couldn't
Mm,
talk anymore. Like I had nothing to spill out, and it kind of hurt me a
mm,
little bit. Hurt just because I was like, damn, dude, and not to, I'm never gonna compare myself to a writer because they're above and beyond what I can do, but it's like that whole writer's block, right?
right.
And I was like, damn,
Right.
dude, I wonder if this is what they go through, where it's like they kind of hit a slump, and they got nothing to say, and they just kind of dwell on
Right.
it, and that's how I felt, dude. I was like, okay, I had all these like cool ideas lined up, and then as I was saying it, I was like, I think I got in my head. I think I was like, dude, nobody's gonna want to listen to that, or nobody's, whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think what I was doing too, and I'm gonna try to not to do this, was I would always go on YouTube and like look at who's like watching what. And dude,
Hmm.
it was almost like how like people on Instagram have to like they always every time they post a picture they got to look to see who liked it. That's what it felt like. I just
Right.
needed like is it gratification? Is that the word? Like I needed like an approval or like a pat in the back, right, or something. And I think it.
That's
It's
That's the same thing with stocks, bro. People buying. I was doing that buying stocks. I had to learn to just, because like you said, you're looking for, well, nobody's gonna buy this, and then when you would go try to chase the crowd, you end up buying the wrong stock at the wrong time. So it's the same. It's no
oh maybe
matter what
yeah
it is. You're right.
yeah dude. It's weird. It's really weird. I don't know, but like I posted the last episode and then I was like, all right, I'm not gonna look. I'm not gonna bother. I don't care. I'm just gonna just keep doing it and not worry about like, how come nobody's listening to this one? This is such a great conversation or whatever. But I just can't do that
It's
anymore,
funny you
man.
mention that. What I found about artists who make songs, rap songs or R&B, whatever it is you make rock. A lot of times, the most popular song, the one that gets the biggest reprisal will be, or the biggest response is the one that they didn't care
Yep.
about, and the one they worked hardest on, the one they put their soul into, and time and redoing it and recorded in perfect one that they love, that specific beat for that specific song. They don't get much response for that one, and you have no control of what the people want, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and you're
Right.
doing it because you love it and you have a passion for it and you have fun working through the process. I think that's where you have to find the fun in working through the process. If you like the process and not necessarily the end result, your hobby may not become, something that where you're compared to somebody who's, like you said, who's huge, and it may not be for another 10 years.
Yeah.
So what? You're having fun. That's If you're not having fun, then don't do it. But if you're
Uh,
having fun, you should get a kick out of that alone.
Right. No, and you know what, dude? The first few are like the first. Actually, no, I shouldn't even say the first few. All of them, dude. Like I've always I always still get a high off of it.
Mm.
Dude, I'm reconnecting with people. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, it's fun. I really enjoy it. It's cool. But dude, I don't know what happened. Like, I don't know what it was. I just hit like this wall of
Mm.
not being able to talk about something. And dude, I don't know what happened. I have no idea what happened. I was like, well, all right, let me hit stop record. I'm only 10 minutes in, and then dude, I just didn't. I was actually really scared to like. I was like, dude, do I have really nothing to say? And I don't know. It was just weird. It was a very weird feeling, but yeah, I don't know. It's goofy, man.
Yeah, that kind of brings me to, I think today, well, not specifically today, but doing this with you again, it's like the worst time and the best time at the same time. The reason why I say it's the worst time in the community, the UAP UFO community, there's so much going on right now. So
Dude.
much going on. And the news is just all over the news.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to work in that environment because that means there's constantly new information and it's changing the environment and the nature of the subject. So while I'm trying to keep up, right? Usually, like before we were preparing to do what we did today, it's quiet. There's nothing but crickets, and I can focus on what I'm doing or what I have an interest specifically with regarding this subject, and just kind of really tune into it.
Yeah.
But then I felt like, wait, no, wait, the universe is like bombarding me, bro. Like I have no way to just abstract everything to this is what I want to talk about. So when I hit you up, I said we got to do it. And I remember when I had no plans. I didn't know how we could come back. I didn't know on what basis because I love researching, but I've never imagined that I would or even care to be a presenter of information. And the reason why that is because people who are presenting are focusing on the quality of the presentation, while the people who are in the background can focus on the quality of the information. And that's what I love doing. I love the focus on the quality of the information.
Yeah.
But I also realize that things are changing. The nature of broadcast in terms of who should speak and why they should speak and when they should speak is changing. The fact that you're doing a podcast is just an example of how the entire broadcasting industry and the concept of itself is turned on its head. I grew up 18 till today listening to Coast to Coast radio. That was really the only way when I was 18. That was really the only way to get daily updates on the phenomena sector, the weird sector, the dark desert sector. There was no way to get that information. But now, fast forward to today, there's no end to it, and and most would say there's a lot of noise. Yeah, but there was a lot of noise also, even coming from, listening to Coast to Coast. I would listen to some of those guys like, who are these guys? Like, why are they on the show? Not hating on them at all, but some of it would be so out there, and they would jump and change spectrum so widely.
Yeah.
You could have on one day, you could have somebody who was really, really important. I think what they were saying was very important and very life changing, world changing. And then the next day you have somebody who's just, going off in a completely different direction. While they're both great, that type of wild change and not having sort of a way to focus just shows that the quality doesn't get better just because there's only a few people doing it.
Yeah.
There's an opportunity for everyone to contribute. And I think that's the way in this podcast and when we talk today, you're going to see me sort of kind of being not defensive, but defending the honor to be able to speak on this subject. Because what I'm going to be talking about is going to be so, it's such a subject where we always want the experts to tell us, but we don't really like the idea of your everyday Joe having an opinion and a contribution. But I think what I'm going to do, what it's going to do is it's going to be self-evident that we're going to need all hands on deck as we cross into this sort of this new sector of thinking where it's just like music. It was before, it was like, if you're not singing for Motown, if you're not singing for Universal, if you don't have a contract with a major record company, I don't even think you're going to be worth listening to. Right? Like, why would you listen to this guy? He's underground. He's not good. He doesn't have a contract with these. But now we're seeing that Universal and these guys are operating like Uber. They're hands off. They're like, dude, these guys can handle all this stuff themselves. The technology is there for them. They don't need $1 million record recording studio. They can have nearly studio quality music by creating it in their home. Yeah. If they need it, of course, we'll be down to have it. But now everything is becoming hands off. Taxis are turning into Uber, hands off. Hotels and other forms of traveling stays are Airbnb, where people own their own homes. Everybody is being able to contribute now because of technology. And I think this is what I'm telling you is, for your sake, you're always going to just don't be afraid to go out and take a break and go out and find that inspiration, because what you're doing is important. And you may not get to the peak of what your destiny, for lack of a better term, but what you're doing already shows a passion for giving an alternative to what's out there. Right. And you feel like, dude, I want somebody to have a chance to hear the way I see, an opportunity to create content for people, because I feel like it was missing this. And then once you start doing it, you kind of forgot, like, dude, why did I even want to do this? But then you one day you'll come back and go, dude, that's kind of what happened to me. And that's why I called you back and I hit you up like, dude, we got to get on. And you were like, already, you're kind of like, already? What? You're ready now? And I'm like, dude, there's something I'm like, something happened, bro. You're like, you're already scared. You're already like, no, dude, tell me. I'm like, I can't tell you. I'm not going to tell you anything. This is closed doors, top secret. I'll hit you. And I told you, I'll talk to you 2 weeks before everything goes down, and then I'll give you a clue just to start you off. And I want to talk about that. I want to hear from you in just a second. But I want to tap into and say the timing was impeccable, because when I asked you to talk with me again on the podcast, I didn't think in my head about Congress, the Pentagon's report to Congress, a part of that whole annual spending, which was also a part of the COVID bill, they're going to report about UAPs to Congress. I didn't think it was going to be in June. And I also, when I wanted to speak to you, I didn't even realize that I had already planned to come out here to Joshua Tree and, Desert Hot Springs, to come out near right down the street, if you could call it down the street from Palm Springs. And to do this. And then when all of that kind of became apparent to me, and I said, oh, the date is going to work perfect on this day, because I'm going to be in the desert, right? I'm going to have that nice feel of that nostalgia of me listening to Coast to Coast at night, and guys like George Norrie saying, in the desert and at night, this is coast to coast at 10. It's got that feel and that nostalgic feel of desert phenomenon, secrets in the desert in the dark. So I was like, dude, we've got to do it all right then. And then when I remembered that Congress is there, the Pentagon is going to report to Congress on UAPs, I'm like, dude, it has this is so crazy.
When is that
And
happening?
on top of that, this is in June. They're going to do this in June.
Ooh,
I think it's
yeah.
43 days from today. I need to get my clock up, but it's happening very soon. We'll go into that also. And but what I was doing was totally separate from all of that. I was just kind of doing my thing as I usually do, just keeping up on different things and researching different things. And then when I told you about what I wanted you to watch 2 weeks ago, that's when the epiphany happened. And then not only that, when I was prepared, it's like you said, when you talk to me in private before the podcast, it's like, dude, are you up to the task of being able to have something of value to share for a certain amount of time? And the amount of information for me was the opposite. It was, can you take gobs of information, 12 books, right, and put it down to amount of time that people can hold their attention, and you could convey a point without getting lost in the sauce, and and it still come away and you did your job. Right. And I spent the last 2 months, I think it was 2 months ago or 1 month ago that we said, let's do it. And I've been spending, like you said, there was times where I wouldn't want to write anything. I wanted to look for more inspiration of how to write it, what specifically to say. And then, again, Universal work within my favor. I would find this content and go, dude, I thought I was going to just blow it out of the water before, but with this, dude, this is gonna take it to a next level. And then trying to put all of that together and make something, give it to everyone for something that they can take away, was a challenge in itself. So much so that I didn't finish preparing till today.
Oh, geez.
And I mean by like a few hours. So that's a whole month and a half of me. And a lot of it is trying to summarize it for you. So what I wanted to ask you first is, 2 weeks ago, I asked you, I said, okay, I'm going to give you the clue of what a lot of this is going to be based on. And of course, we're going to talk about disclosure. We're going to talk about the report to Congress. All of it's going to tie in together tightly. It's going to be in a package for everyone. But I want to ask you, when I said, I'm going to give you the name of a documentary I want you to watch. Right. And I'm going to say how you responded before you respond. I want to tell you how you responded. I said, I want you to watch this documentary, and I'm going to, now, and then I'm going to ask you in the podcast about how you felt about it. And I gave you the name. I said, Walking with the Tall Whites. Yeah. Right. And when I said that, and I didn't say anything else, and you said, huh? All right. Right. And that was it. That was it. Right. And and of course, like, I fell over laughing, right, holding my guts, tears, crying, because I knew you didn't even know. To somebody who just walks up to you, right? That's worse than We Are the Ones. That's, bro, Walking with the Tall Whites. Go get it. And you just go, what? but you watched it, and then you came back and you were like, so tell me, just give me a breakdown of what that experience was like.
Dude, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what I was watching, because if anyone watches it, maybe fast forward to maybe 20 minutes ahead, because there's going to be some spoilers, and if you want to watch it, cool, or if you want a breakdown of it, awesome. But right. It's trippy, dude, how it starts, because I was just kind of, and you know what, dude, it took him by surprise, because he talks about right from the get his time when he was in Vietnam. I want to say it was Vietnam. Right? And dude, and I was like, oh shoot, he saw something. Here's my mind. Oh man, dude, he saw something in Vietnam. Dude, this is gonna be crazy. Right? That's the road that I was on. That I thought I was following him. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And he's a great storyteller. Dude, I was there. Mm-hmm. I was like, I felt like I was right there with him when he's telling these stories about the mortar when he's telling
Uh-huh.
about the mortar
Yeah.
store. And dude, that
Yeah.
hit me a little
Yeah.
bit. I was like, oh my gosh, that must have wrecked him because he's such a young guy and seeing his best, one of his buddies and
Right.
the way he explained it, he was like, yeah, he fell down like he was a cartoon character. And I was like, wow, it was sad. That was really sad. But and dude, Alicia watched it with me too. So like she was very interested in
Great.
it. So
Perfect.
yeah, so we watched it and then dude, because I think I got to look because we both kind of looked at each other and we're like, so did he go straight to Vietnam first? Because it sounds
Hmm.
like he just kind of told his story of when he was in Vietnam, and then I want to say that he was out in Nevada when he got stationed out
Hmm.
in those radio towers or the radio building, whatever it was, right? Or no, the weather
Okay.
facility, right?
Right.
Is that before he went to Vietnam?
So just to help you out there, he not only is the and that's what I love about it. Not only is the documentary not in chronological order, but he's got 6 books that I read, and those are also not in chronological
Holy
order.
crap!
Not only as the whole book, but there's pieces where he jumps around in the each book that you
Yeah.
have to, like you said, really take note. Okay, this has to be before this. So to answer your question, after his experience, he then is shipped to Vietnam, and I'll get into that just to kind of help out. But yeah,
Wow.
keep going.
Okay. Okay. Um, dude, I'll be brutally honest too. I even wrote it in my notes here, dude.
Mhm.
I think the one thing that I really liked about it is that they didn't do uh, like news clippings, like in terms of like something of him being on the news. There was nobody else that got interviewed except for his wife, and
Right.
they solely focused in it on him, and I really enjoyed it, and I liked the fact that there was nobody else on there. Nobody on there being like, well, I mean, when we were in Vietnam, he was really weird, Like we didn't get none of that, right? Because I was expecting that. I was expecting some of his buddies to come on there. And was like, well, you just tell these tall tales
Right.
of meeting these, like or something. And I'd be like, oh, okay.
Right.
But no, dude, he was very confident in his storytelling and yeah, dude, when he started telling the story of how when he drove out there into the desert with that guy. He said he was from L.A. and he was like this handsome man, right? And he was
Yeah.
just like, yeah, he
Yeah.
was just we ended up taking a. I think he's the one that drove him out to that weather uh station, right, or he was at,
Right.
and that dude
Yeah.
the dude started panicking and shaking, and I was like, whoa, and he was saying he was like freaking out. He's like, yeah, they're out here somewhere or something like that, or he goes,
Yeah.
yeah, go check on the
Yeah.
building or
Yeah.
whatever. Dude, I was like, oh shoot, dude, that to me just sounded like a scary movie in the making when that guy was doing that, when he was telling that story of how the what was he? What was that guy from how what was he doing there in the military? Was he like
Um, so he was a weather observer according to his his documentation. He was hired to, as when you're in an airport, you're working at an airport and you fly planes, wind speed is much more important to know when you're flying an aircraft than necessarily when you're driving. But now I'm starting to figure out when I'm driving in the desert, wind is important there too.
oh dude,
So that's why it's all
yes.
extremely important. That's why he ends up being in all these remote parts of the desert, because he needs to get information about that whole area and how it affects the landing patterns and all of that. And it's great. And I hate that I didn't watch the documentary again for talking to
Mm.
you. It's not bad because everything he says is in the book. And I mean, it's 6 books. My God, like
Holy
and they're all
crap.
pretty long. And I listen to and on every. So I have both the audio version of all 6 and the Kindle version to read all 6.
Damn.
And it was important to have all of this because, like you said, I'm going in there and I'm like, okay, what next, right? Or what happened after that? Because in the documentary, he tells the story backwards, and the reason why I think he does that, and it's great, like you said, it's great storytelling.
Great.
It's you have the same confusion that anybody else would have as they experience it, and then later the voila moment when you're like that's why. That I'm pretty sure by the end of the end of the documentary, you're going, that's why. That's why. So that's why that happened. That's what he meant. That's what you. So you're doing that continuously, and then you have such a relieving, psychological thriller type, experience where you're like, all of these weird things that couldn't be explained are starting to make sense, and if nothing else, it's an incredible psychological thriller. If you could share that opinion,
Dude, the one thing that kind of bugs me, because okay, I don't have to admit something. A few
mm-hmm.
times, dude, the way that he talks is like planet Earth status. Dude, he just has this real nice tone,
yeah.
right? And it's very like, dude, just keep talking. You're good. Dude, I was legitimately passing out a couple of times, and at least he was like, "Are you falling asleep?" And I'm like, "Nope, I'm good. I'm good." Right? And dude, I'd wake myself up because, dude, his stories were just like so. Not stories weren't boring, but they're just so pleasant. They're just like so nice to hear, and I was kind of doze off, like kind of fast forward a little bit. One of the things I wrote was, dude, he reminded me of like Kevin Spacey and K-Pax a little bit. And not to hate on that movie or if nobody really likes it, but like when he started talking about coordinates and like where, you know what? I'll hold that story for a bit. Let me hold on to that story. I'll come back to that. But the part that scared me the most was when he goes into that building and he has to stay there and he describes it. I wonder if there's pictures of that building inside of where he was staying. Do you know if there is?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if there's pictures?
I don't. No, I don't think there's any. But he just in his book, if and just to answer about two or three of your questions. One, he has he actually narrates his own books, so you're gonna get
Wow,
the
my
same
God.
pleasant
Holy crap.
grandpa, relaxed. He all six, and he has this. What I told Janaea, I said
So
it felt
funny.
like somebody who likes reading manuals, and they're reading a manual to me. And that's
Yes.
exactly how he talks. His tone is
Yes.
up, down, up, down, up, down.
Right.
And the point and the reason why it's all over the place is because they're memoirs. Basically, this is something he wrote. Imagine your granddad kind of gives you like a journal of his life, and you're like, well, this isn't interesting, right? Why'd you give me? But then you get older, right? And grandpa's getting to a point where he's not, as strong as he used to be when you looked up to him, and you go, dude, I just wonder, like, what did Grandpa do growing up? What was his life like? So then he
Right.
gives you his books, and then you're like, he had all these books. You want to read them, and you go and you read through them, and you don't care how minute the detail is. You want to know everything,
Yeah.
and that's
Right.
kind of what I think his intentions were. I don't think he ever meant to be somebody who to be a whistleblower. I don't think he
No.
meant to do anything like that. I think
Mm-mm.
he just wanted to share his personal experiences with his children, and then his wife told him, like, dude, this is no, you gotta like more people want to hear about this, and
Yeah.
there you have
Seriously.
it.
And I think you're right. That was the one thing that I really liked was the fact that he. I mean, I don't know if it's a bad thing to be a whistleblower. I mean, I guess yes and no, but he was just maybe that's why things never things never I guess bad happened to him, like nothing bad or anything crazy or nobody's coming after him. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, is that? I mean, what's funny is even the wife said, if if these men in black suits come to the house, or she said some line like that, and dude, I was cracking up. I was like, whoa, she's sharp. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the thing that really freaked me out was his first contact with the tall whites, man. Or what would be the correct name for them? I don't even know. I didn't want to.
That's what he calls them.
That's
He
what he
never
calls
gives
them.
them another name. That's it.
Wow,
And
dude.
I got something on that I want to talk about too, but go ahead.
No, it freaked me out because he was like, I mean, you can tell I mean, if anyone watched it, I mean, the part that he starts to explain was when he goes he heard a voice in the back come through the back door and he thought it was a general, or he thought it was a higher up, and he's like, dang, that voice sounds so familiar. Might be I don't know if it's an audio or whatever he calls it. Like, am I being am I have I forgot what he says, but dude, ended up being, I don't know if it was a tall white or not. But somebody peekabooed in the corner, and dude, his whole body didn't he say like his whole body like froze or he freaked out or he got all scared, and then they put a little thing to his head and just kind of hypnotized him, And that's the
Bro,
thing that go
I
ahead.
have to say, I'm so glad that you watched this because you just make this podcast 10,000 times easier for me. Because I struggle, and his story, like you're experiencing, his story is so out there.
It's
But there's so many details,
yeah,
and when all those details are out there, you're like, dude, I don't have time to explain the nature of how weird this stuff is, but also explain it, and
yeah,
then comment on some of these details that we have to kind of go over. You're doing it for me. You're like pointing things out. Yeah. So to clarify, in his book, he details that, and as you remember, he kind of backtracks and explains why all of this was happened, but it throws you off during the experience.
yeah.
Psychological thriller. But what was going on was essentially these tall whites were in some sort of pact with what he calls quote unquote the Pentagon. And I'm going to get into that too, because,
Right.
we have to, there's so many more details, and that's when I use this other book I'm going to refer to, and it's going to get deeper. Like, dude, we're scratching on the surface and we're already blowing minds. Right. But he goes, these tall whites have an interest in Charles because of his very cool nature, that even when he goes through a terrifying experience, he handles it in such a, I wouldn't say he's cool about it. He's not cool about it,
No.
but it's not dangerous to people around him.
Right.
He's what he's doing is he's often praying, or he gives himself the delusion that it's not happening. Whatever he can do to get through it without some out of control panic. Well, what ends up happening is that the tall whites really like Charles because of an incident. And I'll remind you of an incident that leads up to this. If you remember,
The little
he
girl.
inadvertently saves the little girl, which happens
Right.
to be one of the tall woman's daughters, or her daughter. And they love Charles because of that, because everyone else that they had experienced before in that would lose their minds, and they would have to be, discharged from the Air Force because they mentally they couldn't deal with it. I mean, this was in the 60s. This is, I believe, 1962,
Right.
and no one really had any concept of what was going on. So for him to go through that situation and handle it, and overtly, not even knowing that he's doing it, they didn't care. They saw it as it's because of his cool nature that he was able to help us out. Really, just having good intentions, and even on top of that, even when you can understand somebody freaking out, he didn't really freak out and
No.
become a danger to her. So that's when they they have a direct contact to the Pentagon, and it's probably, a specific set of people within the Pentagon who they say, we love this guy. We want this guy around at all times. We don't want anybody else. So that's when he finds out that they would visit him with the generals sometimes.
Oh,
Usually at night, and like
wow.
you said, they would put him in under a deep sleep, and they would talk. They would really, make him get up, walk outside, stand there, and they'll just have a conversation about him with each other, about how outstanding his outstanding his dealing with this situation has been. And to kind of, really sum it up, they were trying the interest the generals had in it was that they were trying to figure out how they could get people to be okay with this. And now clearly Charles wasn't okay, but through his books, he actually demonstrates that they didn't actually have to do that anymore. He began to have conversations with them and be able to hang out with them. But it was very clear, and he explains why he didn't just walk up and shake hands. I think there was only one. There's this guy named, I don't, if you remember, it should be in the document. I'm pretty sure he was. They called him Range 4 Harry. And they called him that because, and they said, why did he get that name? Well, he explains in the book that somebody back in the 50s, way before his time, they said he was an alcoholic, and they used to just kind of throw him out there. And when he first saw it, he thought he was seeing, he thought his alcoholism was causing him to see these things. But then when the guy said, he's got, I guess he wasn't even drunk anymore. I guess he got sobered up, and he went out there and he confronted it. And he said, why am I seeing you? You know, I'm not even drunk anymore. And the guy goes, I'm real, just as real as you. And he said, well, if you're real, what's your name? He said, my name is Harry. So he said, well, now I think the joke was, you know, now my delusions even have names. They're getting worse. So
Holy
every detail
crap.
in this documentary has throughout 6 books thousands of more details and goes much, much
I
deeper.
can't even imagine.
And that's why when I hit you up and I was like, and you know why I hit you up? Because I said, while I was watching this, right? I said, why? I've never seen this documentary. Why am I having deja vu with this? And as you know, I've seen probably every possible interview documentary that's out there. Not saying I have, because of course that I haven't. I'm always looking for more and I find something. And then it hits me. I go, wait a minute, this starts to sound familiar to me. And it didn't actually sound familiar until I was listening one day. So what I was doing was, to get through 6 of his books, I would listen on my way to work, on my way home, at the gym, you know, at night, right? Like, you know, I even like grab Janaea and like, dude, he said this, like, you know, and I'm throwing like something at her totally random that's like exciting to me, but she's like, what? Right? Half sleep. What? I'm like, you know, he just the whole thing, the whole reason they what? And hilarious. But all of these details became very deja vu to me. So what happened was, I go, wait a minute, no. He says one thing, and I go, I know this story. And what the detail was is when he said in one of the books, he goes, the women, you know, the tall whites, they like to dress up. They like to, you know, they had like a Sears. They got me to give them a Sears catalog. And when they got me to get the Sears catalog, they asked if I can go pick up some clothes for them. And, you know, I did it. And over time, they started to, you know, kind of go on their own and do it. And he explains, you know, even in detail how this was able to happen. Like he said, they of course they look much different from us in terms of the description of them. And what I'll do is I took so many notes, and I wanted to make, and I took, you know what, you know how hard this was? I took notes and then I took notes again. I took notes for details and I took notes for summary. So that, but you're helping where I don't really need those detailed notes. I really just need the summary notes.
Yeah.
Because what you're explaining kind of goes through his story. But, you know, I recommend anybody who has an interest, passion, curiosity,
Oh man.
start with his documentary.
Yeah.
You know, it might be a lot to purchase all
No,
those
it's not.
books or all those
His
audio
books. Oh,
books.
okay.
Yeah. The cost.
Right.
But the documentary was only like $5-6, right? It wasn't that much. But
No, dude.
if you want to go deeper,
it's on Prime.
it's Prime. Yeah, it was Prime. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So since it was Prime, like you can, or if you don't have Prime, probably $2-3, right?
Right.
So, and the reality is, there's so many incredible details that nothing, no matter how much I would talk about this tonight, there's so many details that there's no way that I could give you the whole book, like 6 books, right? So
No way.
I'm not worried about that. I just want to make sure that I touch on things, but you're doing a great job of saying, you know, what happened here? Because there's so many details to these experiences that he's wrapping up for you, and it gives you an opportunity. And he even has a lot of different interviews going back. So the first interview he had, I have his first interview. I went and like look all this up. He has the first interview that he was actually on Coast to Coast.
Oh,
And
wow.
he was on, yeah, and it was a great interview. And he was on Coast to Coast. It's just like what you like. He didn't have, but there was no, you know, he didn't have a documentary. So he goes on the radio, and George Noria is like, you know, what is this, right? Like, how do you come with all these fantastic claims, right? Like, this is beyond Bob Lazar, bro. You're like making claims about hanging out with something you call the tall whites. But he actually was on the radio show with a journalist named Paola Harris, and he brought his story to her, and she was immediate, like anybody else would be fascinated with it. And what she did was she went and investigated to first corroborate. I want to make sure this guy isn't pulling my leg. I want to make sure what he's saying is, I'm not saying he can prove his story, but was he in the military? One. Two, did he know some of the people? Now, it's important to note that in his book, he changes the names to respect the privacy of everyone around him. But as he changes the names, you know, he's able to give the real names to Paola, and she was able to go and look these people up, and they go, yeah, we know Charles, yeah, he was this, he's that, he this. So they were able to corroborate his story, not necessarily saying that you have to believe that the central story was true as far as the tall whites. Nonetheless, he has several interviews, presentations out there that can help summarize and go into details that may not be in or told in a different way that may not be in the
the documentary.
Documentary, right? But I'm going to go over some details tonight about the appearance, their ships, their equipment, their purpose. But not only that, what he doesn't talk about, or does he talk about the Greys in the documentary?
He talks about them for a second. Yeah, he talks about. I wrote that down. The thing that scared me was when they showed pictures of them. I was like, "Oh God, is that real?" I had no clue because they talk about like the ones from Communion, like the ones kind of like big head ones.
Right.
And then he talks about one that had 27 teeth.
Right.
The Nordic something.
Norwegians. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The Norwegians.
Yeah, those are the two they said that he saw.
Right.
I think there might have been more, but I can't remember. But
no, you're right.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good.
So the three, like you said, the three that he's claimed to experience are the Greys. Well, primarily the tall whites, who he had a personal relationship with, and it gets very sombering because it gets to the point right before he shipped off to Vietnam. He tells the teacher, which he calls the lady whose daughter he saved, that he has to go. And they like have this whole, I'm gonna miss you. They go through this. I'm gonna miss you. I'm gonna miss you too. I'll never forget you. They kind of go back and forth with that because they really love sending their. So what would happen is they would always send their kids to kind of play around with him, and where other people would have a mental meltdown, rightly so. You can't, do it to me. I just kind of simulated somebody coming to my house in the middle of the night, messing around with my stuff. I would also have a mental breakdown. You can't, for him to be able to handle that with no problem, it made them cherish and appreciate the how different he was from most people in terms of the way he handles being terrified. But I think what he did was he later kind of said, hey, we got to stop with the whole running up on me while I'm sleeping in the middle of the night. That makes it hard for me to operate that way. Yeah. And I think they end up agreeing with that. But there are so many details that he gives about the Greys that he actually dedicates an entire book to the Greys.
Holy crap! I got to read that.
And you're gonna read it, and you're gonna hear about it tonight. Oh. You're gonna hear the great details, and what's more important about. See, the thing is, I didn't just read his books and listen to his accounts and run with it. I could have actually done that, and it could have been cool enough. But I said, you know what? I need to do some work here. I need to, this being my passion and this changing, and we're going to get into why this changed not changed, but evolved my entire perspective about everything and gave me a sense of epiphany, because I was able to go back and all of these details that I know myself, I was able to have a certain spin on it that would make me go, this whole time, this was the key. This was the missing link between the way we've viewed it and one of the reasons it's been so hard to talk about. And we could have this whole time been furthering discussions. But the problem is there's so many people out there, and I'm not taking anything away, who are abstracting away the practical aspect of this. Most people can't get with that. When you talk about going out in the middle of the desert and meditating for an hour to connect with extraterrestrials, most people aren't going to really vibe with that. They aren't going to see a purpose with that. And you're adding sort of this aspect to the phenomena it's very isolating away from talking about it from a military aspect. So the way I'm going to talk about it tonight and go through a lot of these details, I ended up calling it the great, well, I would call it a practical guide to ETs. And here's one detail that he kind of explained that made it very important for us to understand. They're not these people who are, or not, excuse me, people, but these beings that are, and not to say they're not interdimensional. I can't claim that, but they're not these people that you sit and meditate to, and you're going to have a deep connection with them automatically. Not saying that there aren't certain groups who wouldn't be able to, but that's not the only aspect to this. And you're isolating it and you're making it difficult for people to understand and have a practical view of this entire unfolding. So when he describes them as a tall white's daughter, you know, another guy who defends them and he'll kill you if you get too close. There were some of them that he met, and they were great to me. Where he describes Harry as somebody who would come up to hug you, but others wouldn't want to come anywhere near you because they were terrified. And the reason they were terrified is because they were really slender, even though they were 6 to 7 feet tall, some up to 7.5 feet tall. They were very pale and chalky white color, and of course that's how they get their name. Their hair was so white that it was translucent. It's described by some as albinos looking.
Right.
That they saw us, since we're like more beast-like. We're physically able to interact with our environment a little bit more directly than they are. They get hurt easier. They're a little bit more, they're more delicate.
Right.
They're, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I remember him explaining that, how they were like being able to pick up a rock and not have a problem, and I don't want to say that they're weak, but they just didn't have the same physical attributes as us.
Exactly. And they saw us as like, animals, almost, like not necessarily animals, but as I read throughout his books, that it seems to be in some way they kind of have that feel, whereas humans are bulky, animal like. We could interact with animals. And they said they saw, and one interesting thing that he said, and here's another thing that makes it a little less is quote unquote spiritual. I don't know why I'm using that term, for lack of a better term, because when we talk about ETs, sometimes I see out there where there's some sources that go, they want us to be one with our planet. They want us to do this. They want us to do that. They want us to, and they're almost like space hippies, the way they're often described by some sources. And I'm not suggesting that that's not the case for some, but obviously that's not going to be the case for others. And the majority of the narrative itself, when we keep several different things in mind, he describes how he, in interacting with them, they said, you guys interact with your animals and you live with them. These animals could technically kill you, like a horse could kill you. All these different animals, lions can kill you. You guys work to you can't tame them all, of course, because some cannot be tamed, can't domesticate them all, but you still find a way to live with them. He said, other times we see a lot of other races or species on other planets, and like us, we just kill them off. If there's a problem, if we feel like they're a threat to us, we just kill them off. And when I heard that, and also that was another deja vu moment, because I had heard somebody say that before, but it's still like almost an appalling revelation that they're not the space hippies that we had come to kind of assume, and that they may not see the reality that we see or of an ecology of the way the earth should work. That we talk about, if the bees are gone, that's everything, right? You don't have a proper pollination, you don't have a proper balance. But then they make the argument that you guys are kind of weird for living with your threats. Not necessarily the case. We do have plenty of animals that are no longer existing. They've gone extinct, but nonetheless, to have that approach was really appalling to me. So I think we're going to a point where these details gave me an incredible revelation about how we could interact with them and see them. And the next one was that they have families.
Yeah.
To describe, the tall whites as, having families, to describe the grays as having families was mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
And you know what? That brings me to the next important point that I'm going to make. So when I told you to, watch that documentary and look into it, you became exposed to Charles James Hall. The next thing that happened, and it's funny because he changes his own name in the books. That was weird. He calls himself Charles Baker. I don't know why. But
Whoa.
anyway, yeah, yeah. And I noticed that. I'm like, who's Baker? And I'm like, oh, that's him. But he just kind of adjusts his name a little bit. Maybe he didn't know if he would, originally that he wanted to. Maybe he thought that he may put the book out and not really talk about himself. But
Yeah.
destiny may have went a different direction. But what I did was I went through, and I didn't make this point earlier, and I was going to make this point. I went back and I said, I got to go through all my stuff. I got to go through everything. And I went through all the different cases, all the different quote unquote whistleblowers. And I get to this guy named Philip Corso Jr. And he's doing an interview on one of Dr. Greer's channel called the Disclosure Project. I think it's called that. And he talks about how his father was making a lot of wild claims and was in the military. And his name is not just Philip Corso, but Colonel Philip Corso.
Oh.
And I said, I think this is it. I think this is what I need. Aside from a couple of different experiences coming from civilians that I wanted to kind of isolate and highlight as very a really good correlation of what Charles is talking about. But the legacy of Philip Corso absolutely blew my mind when I looked into it more, and I go, this is it. So then I go, wait a minute. He wrote the book the day after Roswell.
Oh wow.
I'm like, dang, I gotta go read his book. So now after I've read 6 books and trying to put all this information together before we meet up and talk, I go, but now I gotta add this book and I gotta correlate all this information and talk about the yin and the yang, and I'll explain what I mean by that. And I go, okay, I gotta go get The Day After Roswell. And I do the same thing. I buy the audio book and I buy the written book because I have to be able to get through it. And then I need to go back and take notes, highlight, prepare. I got to put all this together. And let me talk a little bit about, we'll come back to Charles for a second, but I want to get into who Philip Corso is.
Yeah.
So Philip James Corso, he served in the United States Army from 1942 to 1963, which is also deep because remember, Charles James Hall was in the military in the 60s, and I think it was 1962 that he left, I believe, but I could be a little off on that. So after he joined the army, and this is wiki. He has all his wikis out there. He is a colonel or a retired colonel. He passed away, but he's a retired colonel. He joined the army in 1942, and he served in the Army intelligence in Europe. And he became the chief of the U.S. Counterintelligence Corps in Rome. And in 1945, he arranged for, this is something that he was a part of. He arranged for the safe passage of 10,000 Jewish World War II refugees out of Rome to the British Mandate at Palestine. Today, we know that as, Palestine, Israel.
Right.
He was a personal emissary to Giovanni Montini at the Vatican. Later, Pope Paul was his, when they get their official name. And during a period where the Nazi rat lines were most active. And then during the Korean War, he performed intelligence duties under General Douglas MacArthur as the chief of Special Projects Branch of the Intelligence Division, Far East Command. One of his primary duties was to keep track of enemy prisoners, of POWs, camps in North Korea. He was in charge of investigating U.S. and other United Nations POWs held at each camp in their treatment. And in 1992, he was the Senate Select Committee on POW MIA Affairs. He provided firsthand testimony of that many hundreds of American POW were abandoned at camps in Korea. McCain, actually, Senator McCain stated that his knowledge obtained from those who had personal relationships with Eisenhower led him to believe that Eisenhower was not capable of allowing known American POWs to remain incarcerated after termination of the Korean War. So, as we know, McCain was also a POW. Corso was on the staff of President Eisenhower's National Security Council from 1953 to 1957. In 1961, he became chief of the Pentagon's Foreign Technology Desk. That's a key point. In 1961, he became the chief of the Pentagon's Foreign Technology Desk and Army Research and Development, working under Lieutenant General Arthur Trudeau. He obtained the rank of colonel. He held the command of a battalion commander of the European Air Defense, an intel staff officer, plans and estimate branch of the GHQ in the Far East Command, a chief of special project branch, the G2 section, chief of Foreign Technology Division, the United States Department of Defense, a staff officer, plans division in Washington, D.C., Fort Riley. He was a part of World War II and Korean War. He has the Legion of Merit, the Army Commendation Medal, Bronze Star, American Campaign Medal, American Defense Service Medal, a European African Medal, an Eastern Campaign Medal, and a World War II Victory Medal. So then after, he published the day after Roswell in 1997 about his alleged involvement in the research of extraterrestrial technology recovered from the 1947 Roswell incident. And in July of 1997, he was a guest on the popular, of course, radio show of Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell at the time, where he spoke live about his Roswell story.
Uh-oh.
And shortly after that, he died a year later at the age of 83.
Dude.
So
that's so weird.
What I want to, it's
man.
trippy. And why did I pick him out? Well, we're talking about somebody who is, he's real, right? You can't take from him who he was and the positions that he held, especially working in the Pentagon.
Yeah.
And for him to write a book about all of these incredible things. Now, if I had read only his book and I didn't read Charles Hall's book, I would have not necessarily skeptical, but a very cynical view, meaning that the way we're going to look at this abstracts and isolates you and me as an average Joe from wanting to have any interest in this UFO phenomenon, because the military has their hands full trying to figure a way to kind of just push them away and make it an issue of national security that will never have any real interaction with them. But then if you read Charles Hall's books, you go, wait a minute. On the other hand, this guy is talking about these beings having families. In fact, let's go directly into the Roswell crash as a result. And what I want to do is, this is very important because this is where Philip Corso and where Charles Hall meet. Their different perspectives and experiences have similarities on their view of it, but there's also some key differences. And you'll see how some of these details just kind of blow your mind. Now, one thing I want to start with is he talks about when the Roswell crash, and he wasn't there at the crash, but he was under General Trudeau, under his orders. So he had to investigate this as a result of, if people aren't familiar, the Air Force used to be a part of the Army, and it was just called the Army Air Force. So when the Air Force was split off into its own thing, and this was in 1947, right when the Cold War started. So that makes this extremely important, intense time. So this becomes when we started developing the CIA. This is when the KGB popped up. KGB, I think it was a little bit earlier. A lot of these things just changed names also and then expanded. All of this is happening. The Cold War is starting. You have the split off the Air Force from the Army. And then all of a sudden you have this crash in Roswell where the major who was on site, the closest, highest ranking officer at the site at the time, whose name is Marcel, I'm thinking off the top of my head, his last name is Marcel. He goes and says, for the record, we captured a UFO, but a day later, that story was recanted, and he said it was a weather balloon.
Right.
Now, everybody pretty much knows the general, story of Roswell. And if you don't, I'm not going to go through each detail the way the Roswell story is purported to have happened, but there's plenty of documentaries out there. The key thing I wanted to touch on is he explains that as he reads these reports and is blowing his mind, he gets to a report and he says, and this is where I want to point out something important to make, I think, my argument here for sort of the family thing. He goes, as they're looking at through the crash, the military gets there, they shove off everybody who doesn't belong there. It's military only or Army only, Army Air Force only at that time. And he goes, he reads through the paper and they're looking through the crash debris and the although there was things all over the ground, the craft itself was pretty much intact, and they're looking through some of the debris, and then they find one of the guards goes, he sees something and he yells out, there's people in there, and they're looking at these bodies that are laying out there, just out, dead, lifeless. Yeah. And then they see something at the corner of their eye in the report, and one of them was staggering away, one of the little grays, and they go, you stop, and they freak out and they're like, this thing is trying to get away, and they end up shooting it. And when they shot it, it staggered even more. And the report it says, as the guard says that as he was getting closer to it, that this thing was able to talk to him, but he didn't talk to him in a conventional way. He implanted in him an emotion, and the emotion was of two different emotions: deep pain, physical pain, anguish, and two, a deep sadness, not for himself, but for the other beings that died in that crash. And you know why that struck me? I could have just been like, if I had been reading that any other day, I'd have been like, oh, wow, this, it's pretty trippy. But Charles says something incredible. He makes an incredible claim. And I think it's one of the most important claims that anybody could ever make. And it correlates to what Phil Corso says. Because in the Phil Corso's book, he read reports that some experts or scientists that they had put on this had gone based on the fact that when they took these beings back to the base and they performed, in fact, that's an important thing too. Everybody can look into two people who were still alive and gave their own, they've talked about what they saw. I think the nurse didn't know. The nurse who was forced to, she was an Army nurse, and she was forced to kind of write down everything that what they call the infamous alien autopsy. And then there was the not the coroner. I think you basically call him a coroner, but it was a small town. They called him and asked him for some we put a body in they wanted some small child size burial what's the term I'm losing
Caskets.
my caskets. Yeah, they wanted some very small caskets. And the guy he goes, he's done several interviews. He even did one on Unsolved Mysteries when they were doing the whole Roswell thing back in the 90s. And he does a great breakdown. And what ends up happening is, as they're doing these autopsies, they came to one of the conclusions that these were like not like humanoid robots, kind of. And that kind of, and the reason why they did that was because they felt that their bodies were made perfectly for long space travel. They had an absence. They didn't have as many complicated organs as us. They had like one or two organs that regulated their entire body. And as a result, that seemed like it would be the best thing that you would need to have if you needed to be in space traveling for a while. And they thought, okay, well, if that's the case, they must be robots sent here. But on the other hand, you have a contradictory nature that they felt grief and pain. You wouldn't have a robot feel horrible about somebody else, another robot dying. You would not want to program that into a robot. So, and then something else is something incredible that Charles claims. Charles actually makes the claim that these were children. And he actually breaks down and he goes,
Whoa.
people who come across the smaller ones and the tall ones, as you may frequently hear in some of the documentaries, and you may frequently hear from some people who've been claimed to have been abducted, that they would have like the small ones, and those were like, the ones who were the lower rank, and then you would have like a tall one who would be of a higher ranking. He said a lot of people would mistakenly think that these are two different types of aliens. But the reality is that they were children. That's why they were
Wow.
much smaller. And he goes into a deep explanation of how a lot of the times when people would have these planes and the craft would, go by, and they would, the craft would go by the air. People say I was in an airplane and it flew right by. There's a lot of stories and accounts of pilots having seen craft, and the craft would fly by them real fast and come up real close, and then it would, go away, and it would be sort of this it would scare the crap out of the pilots, of course. Well, he explains and he goes, based on what I understood, they were children playing chicken because they thought that that's what people like to do. They didn't know that what they were doing was malicious. They thought the airplanes liked it. So when people or pilots would have these close encounters and say it came up right next to the ship, it came up close, and the aliens in these childlike aliens, and when I say child, he refers to two different age groups. There's the adolescents who are usually, equivalent to our 9-year-olds, maybe a little bit younger. And he'd say the teenagers were usually the actual pilots. And these scout crafts were given to them basically by their parents. And I read, it's such a huge claim, and it's so far beyond our understanding. I had to take a minute because I go, the first person would go, that doesn't make any sense. Why would somebody give a parent give a spaceship to a teenager, right? And then it hit me, and I go, yeah, but we give cars to teenagers, right? To us, I mean, if you were go back in Civil War, right, and there's no cars, there's just horses.
Right.
And then you tell them, you go back in time and you tell them, hey, in the future we have cars. And they go, what are cars? And you explain to them, well, you have horses, and your horses travel at a limited speed, maybe 5 miles per hour. I mean, you don't have a horse sprinting galloping full speed throughout its entire, so most of the time you're having your horse kind of walk, and it's a little bit faster, so probably 5-10 miles per hour. So in the future we have cars, and our cars can go anywhere from 30 miles per hour. We drive them usually anywhere from 35 miles per hour to 65 on our freeways. And sometimes, even if we want to be daring, we can drive them at 100 miles per hour or more,
Right.
200 for professional drivers. To somebody, in the 1800s, they would think you're nuts. And they go, well, who's allowed to drive these things? And you go, well, our ages are 16 years old for a permit and, 21 for your final license. And they would go, are you sitting here telling me that? I mean, scientists back in those days thought, if you went faster than, 10 miles per hour, I don't think they thought it was possible. I mean, you can look that up. There was, when we had the first airplane, the Wright brothers, they proved, or the train, number one, proved that you can go faster than 10 miles, 15 miles per hour. So to explain to somebody in not medieval times, but yeah, there too, but in the 1800s, that you would give a teenager access to a car that can go 100 miles per hour,
Yeah.
120 miles per hour is bonkers. But we do.
Yeah.
We teach them. We have certain safety features. We have certain training that you have to go through. And there's a certain maturity that you usually give the kid. And, you love your child and you want them to be safe on the road, but you also want to give them a sense of independence. So as I began to think about those details and draw that analogy, it became a little bit more easy to understand the idea that these grays, if they were to give children the keys to what he calls scout crafts, it's I can understand the way he would understand, and they have safety features. He explains that that they have I mean, he goes through so much stuff, but he so many details. This guy is he became a physicist. I think he had a master's in physics, and he became a computer engineer, I believe.
Damn.
So when it comes to details, that guy is he wants to give them all, but he explains that they have certain force fields to protect the crafts from radar beams, small rocks, missiles, bullets, and all sort of projectiles. But he says, however, the craft had its limitations. The first and foremost major limitation of the alien children scout craft is that the alien craft of that design can only engage in high performance flight when their outer protective fields are turned on and fully powered up. Only when their outer protective fields are turned on and fully powered up and is the craft and its occupants protected from debris, projectiles, and radiation, and extreme G forces. G forces generated by high performance maneuvers. And in the 1960s, the United States observer in Indian Springs, Nevada, on numerous occasions, he personally witnessed tall white scouts of a similar design and operation. It would be slow. So when they were going slower, they had to turn down their protective force fields for it to be flown correctly. And it was like a buggy, like a horse and buggy. So he said also they obviously lacked important backup safety equipment such as an emergency locator, beacons, etc. So when he begins to explain that the craft does become vulnerable, because my initial impression was that if they have the technology to build these things, there's no way we can shut these things down, shoot these things down. While that is generally true, there are small times of vulnerability. And he also explains, he says, keep in mind, they're children. So they make mistakes. So if there's a point in time where they make an adjustment and lack of better judgment per se, they open themselves up to being shot down. And he believes that's what happened in Roswell. He believes that they were playing around, and they love weather balloons for one because they looked incredible from the sky, which is why you may often hear about weather balloons and UFOs kind of being together, because sometimes they would even play around with them because of the way they look. But he believes that the craft was shut down because one of the children made a mistake. And he also believes that what happened was that when the craft was shot down, they usually traveled in pairs or in threes so that they could, make sure they're watching out for each other. Well, he believes what happened was that after the crash, the other another craft with children, of course, in it, started a search pattern. They had to go find their friends. We got to go find them. So they began to kind of look around to figure out what happened. I don't believe the first craft was shot down, according to him. But the second one was. As they were flying around, they were doing a search pattern. And they could actually listen to the radio communications between these fighters and the base. But what he said they didn't know, and the fighters did not tell the tower that they were armed until it was kind of too late for the alien children.
Yeah.
But he said as they were looking around for their friends, they were frantic and they slowed down. And when they slowed down to properly fly, they had to disable certain safety measures, and they couldn't necessarily be. They were vulnerable, unprotected. And he said when the jets, the 509 squadron came up, the bombing group came up, and these were jets. They were P-80s. These are 1960s jets, pretty cool looking actually. When they flew up, he initially thought the alien children initially thought they were coming to help. So when they were coming to help out, they thought, oh, great, they're going to help us out, until you realize, the jet said they wanted to attack. And then that's when it was, pretty much too late.
Yeah.
And then it was, I think, one they shot down, and then another got away because they realized, oh, this is bad. And Charles says he believes that these children who died are still missed by their parents to this day. And they still consider them heroes because they died certainly trying to help their friends. So this whole story told from that perspective completely just blew my mind. And it really gave me a different way and a practical way of looking at it. And then I went and I looked at Philip Corso's, him looking at the perspective. He's deeply military. And he goes into the whole Cold War thing. It gets deeper. It gets so much deeper when we talk about Philip Corso, because he goes into building up like, look, this thing got back to the Pentagon, and we started to try to figure out quickly, how do we defend ourselves? How do we build up a military, not only against the Soviets now, but now we have this whole other situation. And he goes deep. Like, he breaks down how this issue is. If a lot of people that are into Cold War politics, I'm really a big fan of Cold War. So as he was explaining some things, it was natural to me. But when he says, Khrushchev, the prime minister of the USSR, he didn't really want war, dude. Like, he just wanted to make sure, like, he was trying to keep things cool. But we started to do things. A very interesting thing happened. Now, the U-2, I don't know if people know about the U-2 spy plane. This was before the SR-71. It had really wide wings. It was very difficult to fly. Before we had satellites, we were using that to take pictures of Soviet, actions, to use it for surveillance and reconnaissance.
Right.
Well, he said they stopped just using it for that. They added an extra thing to the list. They were trying to figure out. They were starting to find out that these aliens had bases, and what they wanted to do, they wanted to root out the bases. They didn't want the bases in American soil anymore. They didn't want them, and this was specifically for the Greys, which is interesting because the Tall Whites they had a really good relationship with.
Yeah.
And according to Charles Hall, that they were trying to get more technology from the Tall Whites. They were working together with the Tall Whites, but the Tall Whites did not give technology unless it helped them. So you go, yeah, we need technology. You want to make our stuff better. So what's it got to do with me, right? They just weren't just giving it. And if they were the same way with information, he would ask, even Charles would ask them all kinds of questions like, what planet are you guys from? And they would say something like, well, what does that matter? If I told you, would you know where that is? He goes, no. And then they would laugh. And they would like kind of had like this condescending, like, he's silly,
Yeah.
he asks us questions about things that even if he had the answer, it wouldn't be useful. So, but he also talks about a woman named Pamela who was extremely afraid of him, but she also found him to be very entrancing. She really loved being around him, but she was terrified of him. And the reason for that, he kind of explains, and I kind of understand. It has to do with the fact that he says their nerves are made different from us, their nervous system. So they can't, he said they looked up to us and complimented. I think he said this in the documentary too. They complimented us on the way that we can multitask. He said when they thought it was incredible how he would do his job while listening to the radio and dancing.
Wow.
Like to them, that was like, dude, we don't do that. That's not something we do. So that also makes them more sensitive and nervous. So they will be quick to shoot you before, as a person, most people are like, they think about a situation before they do it. They're quick to action. So that's why throughout his books and even in the documentary, he explains why he moves so delicately, slowly. He doesn't want to make the wrong move. It's because he doesn't want them to react too fast and hurt him. And even in the book, he explains that this woman Pamela, who was really obsessed with him, she accidentally shot him because she couldn't control her nerves, and it almost killed him. But she was supposed to. The point I was trying to make is she was supposed to. They needed her to become comfortable with people because she was supposed to be sent to a U.S. Base to help with some technology transfer, but they couldn't do it until she became comfortable of interacting with people. Naturally, we're terrified of them, and they're terrified of us in terms of unless you have guns, and even if you have guns, you might shoot too quick. So, I felt that to be one of the things that was like really, really important, and it drives so deeply into all of this as it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And he also mentions, it's important to mention that he said he didn't like the Greys. He said he didn't really want to interact with them. He didn't feel right around them.
Wow. Yeah,
which also kind of correlates with.
Are you talking about James?
Yeah, Charles. Yeah.
Oh, Charles James. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he says that he had a great relationship, in his opinion, with the tall whites, but he didn't feel comfortable around. He didn't want to meet the Greys. He didn't, whatever he saw, he just did not want a direct interaction with them. He just didn't like the idea. And on top of that, he says also that the Greys and the tall whites didn't trust each other. They did not interact with each other. Wow. He said he never heard of them having like an actual fight, like they didn't shoot each other. Yeah. But they stayed away from each other. And I found that interesting because you think about the fact that they have these bases that are on American soil in the mountains. One of them he describes was right off, of course, like Indian Springs. But he said the Greys had a base near Bishop, California. And I was like, name something here too. I have a coworker who lives in Bishop. I tell my coworker, dude, you got Greys out there, man. But no, I was just kidding. But the idea that, he gives the location that they're there. But Philip Corso, on the other hand, says that, they have been working very hard to root out the Greys. They didn't want them anywhere near them. Wow. And he talks about, them seeing them on the moon. He talks very detailed about the politics. And that's what's so good that's what Philip Corso has that Charles doesn't. Charles has his own, he has some perspective on things, especially from the perspective of the ETs and a sympathetic nature, at least making it more practical and more human to understand. But Philip Corso gets deep into the politics. He gets deep into how real it became, because it wasn't just no longer a Cold War between the USSR and the ETs. In fact, he said at some point when we figured out that that this was what was going on, we were trying to like click together and just trying to we would stab each other in the back from here and there. It wasn't like honest and transparent, but we fiend transparency. But we really needed the help of the Russians to tackle this issue. And he talks about how they used technology from and he didn't say the tall whites, but now that I think about it, there could have been some help from the tall whites, but also from crashes to develop the technology. Now, it's funny that I have to point out that I don't want to go into all the individual or justify how he can justify how technologies were reversed from alien craft. That's been a subject of several alien ET or UFO documentaries that I've come about, and I'm also say that technology did not come from aliens. It came from this, it came from that. I'm not here to justify either story. I'm here to convey it and see some of the correlations and how deep this gets as we get to this disclosure, which we also have to spend a little bit of time. And I told you this is going to be long. I told you we're going to take a while to get through this because it's so deep, it's so epic, and the reason it's important for you and I to have this conversation, I don't think, and I'm not tooting my own horn here. Out of all the documentaries that I've seen, everything that I've read, nothing has come close to what I would have considered to be this good and put all this together and project. A lot of people are taking information that they've got from Philip Corso and they're just taking bits and pieces and going, but they're not saying where they got this stuff from. I'm going to be very transparent and say this is coming directly from this source, and this is going to change if this information is interpreted correctly and we share it. It's going to change everything, especially as we get close to the time where this disclosure thing is coming. I don't know what's going to happen, but I can tell you that the more information that we have, the better mentally prepared we are pretty much for anything walking forward. We can at least prepare our minds for it. Before this, it would be just utter chaos and confusion walking in this and just demanding answers. And I'll get into that later too, but that's why I said, hey, it's going to be long because we got to go through all these details and we got to go through how impactful this is.
Right.
And we don't really want to leave anything out. We want to make sure we get through it all. So far, what are you kind of getting out of this? And then we scratched the surface, dude. It's just so much. Like I said, it's all so incredible.
I feel like there was a missing piece with the other person that you were talking about. Now I gotta look into him. But that's crazy that they met.
No. Philip Corso and Charles Hall never met. This is
I thought
this together.
Oh, I thought you said that
this
they
is all
met.
Me.
Oh my god.
No.
Can you imagine?
Right. And it's for me, they're meeting in my head because
oh my god,
this information correlates so perfectly. Now I have to believe. I can't not believe that Charles didn't read the book The Day After Roswell. I have to believe that he did, because anybody who's interested in this and is that age group, and I mean, if you call yourself really into ufology, you have to read it anyway. But I believe he did read it. I have no reason to think that he didn't. He'd have to say he did, but this information is so correlative, and it's just there's no reason he wouldn't read it. I would have to say.
I might have to read that. I don't think I've ever read that.
Oh, you have it in the audiobook. They also have an audiobook. The guy who wrote it, Philip Corso worked together on it with another guy. The guy who actually wrote it, he has this like Jersey accent or Boston accent. And he reads through it, and it's good. He does a really good job, and it's the opposite as far as the energy from Charles Hall's voice. It's more gritty. He gets you into it, a little bit more.
Have you been dipping more? Have you been dipping more into audiobooks? Do you like them?
Oh yeah, I love them because I can't always sit down and read.
Yeah.
And I want to get through so much content that I need a way to get through it and not have to be sitting down emotionless.
Right.
I can listen to it while I'm driving and working out, things like that.
Yeah, dude. I try to listen to 1984 audiobook, and that book is, dude, I didn't even know about it. I've never heard of it, anything like that. My buddy was like, "Hey, 1984 is kind of happening right now, huh?" And I'm like, "What the hell are you talking?" Like, dude, that's like the craziest thing anybody's ever told me, especially not knowing what the book is. Right. Somebody just coming up to you, giving you a number or whatever. But I mean,
Right.
but I knew he meant a year by the way he said it. But he was like, yeah, dude's kind of 1984 right now, huh? I'm like, the hell, dude? And I thought he was messing with. I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, dude, like the book 1984. I was
Right.
like, dude, I've never read it. So I ended up listening to the audio, but bro, I got in trouble because I was falling asleep. I was like listening to this guy talk, and I was like, oh, dude, this is freaking Nyquil. But the book is very intense. Yeah, I've been trying to find a way to, or I've been I mean, I guess they're all different for audiobooks. Like everyone has their own person that they ask to read their book.
Hmm.
But man, I might be interested in listening to uh what's his name's
Philip or
James
James?
Hall or
Yeah, yeah.
Charles Hall.
Charles is.
Charles Hall.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't mind listening to that.
Yeah, definitely. When you said 1984, I kind of chuckled because yeah, I saw the movie. I didn't read the book, but I
Oh
saw the movie.
boy, dude, I couldn't get
Um,
through it. I got her. Well, I think what it was I got so excited because I listened to the audiobook and then I was like, oh, they made a movie? Because I was trying to
right.
picture it in my head, like, dude, how would they make this to a movie? And and it wasn't because it was bad. It was just kind of like, hey, we gotta go somewhere, you know. And I started it. I was like, hey, can you take me to? Blah, blah. I was like, ah, okay. I just never got back to it,
Right,
but
right, right.
I love the actor that's in it. Dude, the guy from Alien.
Hmm.
I forgot.
Right.
Ah, shoot, forgot his name. But the guy that has the alien that spits out him. I think he just recently passed away. But I've always liked his movies. But yeah, I got to go back and watch that movie, 1984.
Are you talking about? Is it John Hurt? Was that him?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
dude. Yeah.
And well, one of the
Rest in peace.
reasons most people should know about 1984 is because of the guy Bob Flagg who plays Big Brother in the movie. He's used by Apple for the original Apple One, I think I forget, but the big commercial
Yeah.
that they did in 1984, and they used that scene, and they used the scene of someone crushing the big screen to get rid of him, and essentially they were saying that the Apple is a revolution. This thing is going after all the Big Brother, big industry or big tech, and they're going to revolutionize everything. So that was like, and I think that was during the Super Bowl, and that changed. That was like an epic commercial. So, and since that computer came out in 1984, it was kind of perfect for that's where the idea drew from. So that's how most people probably know or first heard about 1984, unless you're just into, like you said, dystopian films, which I'm definitely into. I love dystopian films,
Me
and that was
too,
one of the
man.
ones I saw.
I definitely like the 80s ones a little bit. I mean, if they try to do one now, that's cool, but
Yeah,
I just like how they do like their sets, and a lot of the stuff is like
right,
miniatures, right? And it probably takes them
right.
like 8 months to make for like a 10-second shot or whatever it may be. Like, dude, I love that. I love stuff like that. But or dude, like we've talked about before with uh there's Omega Man, and then there's Soylent Green,
Soylent
right?
Green, of course. Yeah,
Dude, it's
yeah.
like, dude, those I don't know what it is about those movies, man. They hit a nerve with me. They're crazy.
Well, what I love about it is, the 70s, their sets, it's spooky to me because they're depicting technology, and a lot of it is they're trying to depict today, but they're
Right.
using what they have then. So that ominous, feeling of, you're basically conveying never moving forward in that sort of abstract way. Like, we've never moved forward. And there's another movie, there's a great movie, dystopian movie, where it's called Population. There's a certain population, it's called Population something, and you reach a certain population and nobody could have babies. You were allowed to buy a lifelike doll, and that would be like, your version of having a baby. And if you were caught having a baby and your baby was under a certain age, they would kill like you and that baby. Everybody had to go.
Wow.
They would just big dome over you. And this is in the 70s, and it was in the whole cities were all it was nothing but uh it was smog. So they had pop pollution had like kind of basically, so they were like, they had museums, and a museum would be like, what did trees look like, what did animals look like,
Wow.
what did grass look like. And they would have lifelike things like cats in there, and they would have like families. They would have people like playing out what a family was like back then, and it was just in a deep movie. But like you said, depicting from the '70s, not necessarily just what they thought it would be like, but that sort of retro futurism is what they call it, if trying to depict what the future would look like from the past, has a really spooky and ominous feel to you of just things never moved forward. And in some ways things haven't changed. Maybe not the technology, maybe not the style, the architecture, maybe that's changed, but some of the principle and social things we still struggle with, you know. So I think that's kind of adds to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the reason why Alonzo always go back. We always went back and forth with Twilight Zone. I mean, they kind of did the same thing of like how they thought the future was going to be. I love it. I love that stuff, and some of it's creepy, man. Like, dude, I mean, well, I don't know if you've gone back and watched any of the Twilight Zones, but like, dude, the very first episode is about this guy, and he's gonna get sent out to space, right? But the whole thing is him being in this town and him being alone, and like, dude, he has no idea who he is and why he's there.
Right.
It's crazy, dude, and it had to do with him being put into this little box, and they were gonna send him out to Mars. That's all it was. Right. And dude, he went through like a whole crazy hallucinating. So it's just weird to think like how, what's his name? What's the dude's name that's sending people out to space? Elon Musk wants to send people out to Mars. I don't know. It's just trippy how they thought they were going to send somebody out there in like this little like container. I don't know. It's weird. It's really
they had to kind of test out how he would handle isolation.
Right. And it's crazy because dude, in the episode, like they tell him that they could give him everything, eat if they needed to let out waste, whatever it is. But it's like the one thing they couldn't give him was like companionship. Right. So he's just all alone, man. It's crazy. It's a crazy episode. It's a good episode.
Yeah, I mean, like I did watch, I binge watched Twilight Zone, I think twice while it was on Netflix, just all the episodes.
Dude, so good.
And it was it definitely the way he thought, and to that he even did Sterling. He even did a UFO interview, and he used that classic voice, his classic mannerisms with the cigarette, and he hit it out the park, right? With just talking about it. So somebody like him, he's definitely gonna go in and go after that, and all of that stuff kind of comes back to everything we're talking about. Comes back to what we're talking about tonight. It's all about we're going into something and we don't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
And we think back, I hate to say, but we think back to the way COVID unveiled itself. And I remember December 29 thinking when I first saw it on the news, when they had reported in Wuhan there was something going on and it was airborne. So I used to watch Outbreak with my mom all the time.
Horrible movie.
That movie a million times.
That movie's so bad. I don't mean that. And like, don't ever watch it. But I mean, that'll hit a nerve with some people, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's funny like I couldn't watch it today because I mean that was depicting it. It's better. It would have been better if you saw it before COVID. Let me just say it that way.
Yeah.
Some movies are better before COVID, and the reason why I say that is because the fear of how it will play out was much worse than the movie. The movie, they contained it, right? They found there's this, in every movie, there's a hero. You watch him and he saves the day, right? He makes everything better. We don't have to worry. And the reality is, it didn't happen like that, like in Outbreak. Somebody didn't call off the bomb, right? Don't drop the bomb. Like he spins. And he's incredible actor, right? One of my favorite actors of all time. And he's like, I don't know if you remember the scene where he's just like, they're gonna bomb the town to make sure that they wipe out that spreading, that virus that was spreading. And he gives him like a breakdown. They're using Dustin Hoffman is talking to a plane, and they're gonna drop this slow dropping bomb, and he's trying to talk to them and tell them not to drop the bomb. And you don't drop the bomb on those people. If you drop the bomb, Dustin Hoffman, how he sounds. If you drop the bomb, you're going to kill a lot of people. And then Morgan Freeman is in it. It's an incredible film. And but that didn't happen real life, right? There was nobody to come and tell it, come save the day. I mean, there were a lot of people who worked hard to get, vaccines out, to get people to take measures to take care of themselves, uh, avoid it. But even with all that human intervention, which saved tons of lives, nonetheless, in 2019, when I heard about a problem in Wuhan, and when I heard it was air, so the first thing I wanted to know is because the way they use that term in the movie, is it airborne? Like the way they play on these key terms in the film was so good. And then that's what as soon as I heard there was something going on in Wuhan, I said, is it airborne? Right. And as soon as they said it's airborne, I was like, it's coming here. There's no way. I mean, when something's airborne, and I just thought of the plane scene.
Dude, are you kidding me?
I said, when something's airborne,
you know what comes to my mind automatically?
what's that?
Is the freaking movie theater scene.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
When they follow the one germ, germ, they just follow
germ. Right. And that dude looked, bro, that's how I look when back in the day when I had to go into work sick.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Uh-huh.
I was like, dude, I look like that. And they're like, hey, thanks for coming in. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, send me home, dude. Why do you have me here?
Hey, mister, are you going to eat your cookie?
Oh.
Bro.
Dude, when he sneezes and it just does that whole shot of the germs going everywhere and going to people's mouths and everything.
And then when the little kid wants the guy who's the carrier, he got it from the monkey, and he's like, hey, mister, you're gonna eat your cookie? And he's like, half a second, it was shot so beautifully, and he goes, the mom grabs the kid's hand. And I just love the way he goes, and he's out of it. He plays his part. His name is Jimbo. That movie is so stuck in my head. And she goes, leave the nice man alone. He doesn't look like he's feeling too well or something like that. And he goes, I don't want any trouble with the law. And the way he said that stuck with me because we saw it so many times. And I kind of say that sometimes whenever I'm not feeling it well. I just play out that little scene when he's just laying there. But yeah, horrible. So what we learned from that is information is extremely it can be politicized. It can make you panic. You may not have information as bad as you want it. There was a time when we were just like, dude, I need information. We need information. We can't get it. We don't have it. It's like we need it. People are dying. It was the worst for me. Kind of the worst possible situation happened, and I think that taught us, or hope that it taught us, for us that are still here and the children that are yet to come, that information is extremely powerful. And when there are whistleblowers, you have to listen. We can't keep saying to ourselves, whistleblowers, just let them, ignore them. And when it's time, the government is just gonna, tell us the right thing to do. And then I do believe that the government will eventually do the right thing. But we live in a bureaucracy. Things take time.
Right.
You have to wait for meetings. You have to wait for people to agree. You have to wait for them to get the information themselves. Then they have to figure out how that information is going to make them look. Regardless of how it's going to help, they're going to try to have to see in how it makes them look. Are they going to lose their job by disclosing this information? So I'm not out to attack. I'm just trying to be realistic. The realistic thing is, even myself, if I screw up at work, I'm trying to figure out a way to tell somebody in a way that doesn't make me look bad. Josh, this device is down. We're losing packets. What happened? Well, the device started updating. Really? On its own? I don't know. It might have had, I think I pressed something. I don't know. But so, when information makes you look bad, and the people you have to report to, whether it be us, the American people, or someone else above you, you want to do it in a way, you take the time. You don't want to just say anything too fast because you may, make yourself look bad. So when it comes to disclosure, and it comes to ET disclosure, and it comes to this situation, and you see where we are today. Now, I don't know if you've been following, and I haven't even been, it's been very difficult for me to follow. But recently we had Obama, who was on the what is it, the
Yeah.
late night show,
Yeah. Right.
and Reggie Watts asks him what's up with them aliens, and he
Yeah.
said, he went on the record. The former president of the United States went and said there are things out there and we don't know what they are, and they are really disrupting to us. And that's just on top of the fact that we have David Fravor, who was basically your real life in terms of Top Gun, the movie. He was the real life Maverick. He went to Top Gun. He's one of the best pilots, retired today, best pilots in the United States Navy.
Right.
And he got, he witnessed, he chased, and his wing, I think it was his wingman. She actually went on 60 Minutes to tell her side, and she hadn't come out
Right. Yeah. Actually listened to that.
on the 60 Minutes one.
Yeah. I just watched that recently.
And
yeah.
Yeah, because it just came out, so you saw it probably just as fast as it came out. The important thing, here's something I wanted to say about her. She said, in that interview, or most people who are doing interviews right now about this whole problem, they're saying, I'm not saying it's alien. I just don't know. I don't believe that they don't think that it's alien. And here's why. And this is an important point. She said, and the reason, and I'm not attacking her, she has every right not to want to look. She has a family. She has the respect, the merit of being a pilot, serving and doing what she had to do. And if I were her, I wouldn't want anybody, to think that, I was out here saying I believe in aliens. She's still isolated and alone in that if she does. But I don't believe that she didn't think that when she experienced and she chased that Tic Tac UFO with Commander David Fravor, that she didn't think it was aliens. The reason why, she said, if it wasn't on radar and I didn't capture it, with our electronics, with our sensors, with everything that we use to target and track objects, if I didn't have all of that, I wouldn't have said anything. Well, then if that's the case, there is no way that you could believe that was China or Russia.
Yeah.
Because your sole purpose as a fighter pilot is to shoot down, report, and attack and chase anything that is not allowed within the airspace, whether you're in international waters, you're off the coast of the United States, wherever that is. Your job as a fighter pilot is to shoot down, confront any problem that looks like it's invading airspace and making a danger.
Right. For
you to say I wasn't going to say anything tells me that you thought, right? Nobody does that. That's job is to chase down and report enemy aircraft. Your job is to chase and report and say get some more craft up here because we're going to shoot this thing down. So I believe it is no way she had to have believed that, okay, what I'm dealing with is otherworldly. But rightly so, most of these people are doing these interviews, whether they're retired U.S. Navy chief, which a U.S. Navy chief did recently. He did a CNN interview, as all of these news media sources are beginning to do stories on them, and they're bringing in, the big guns in terms of they're bringing in creditable people. Charles, what's his name? Tucker on Fox News. He has an opinion-based show. He's covered all this a lot more than other standard news because he's an opinion show. He can do a little bit more. He's not reporting specifically news in a way where it's like you only can report the facts and leave it at that. Right. He can take Carl Tuckerson. I think that's what he said. That's his name. He can go into these things. He can talk about it more. He can be a little bit more free to state what he believes is going on, and that's pretty cool because Fox News has a huge following, just as CNN does. But a lot of people watch his show. I think less people have started watching it since the whole debacle in 2020. But nonetheless, those people are probably going to return, or he'll get more followers. But nonetheless, this issue is becoming so popular that I can't even keep up. Usually, I'm sitting around like waiting, like, hitting the reload button on these websites, like, dude, where's the UFO stuff gonna come in? But now I'm like, dude, I can't even keep up. The Ministry of Defense, they're gonna reopen their and that's the UK. They're gonna reopen their UFO ministry. There's their office, and the radar confirms UFO swarm around a Navy ship. That just jumped out. That they've been dealing with swarms. You have another huge, a big one for me is that if, as you know, ATIP, the head of ATIP, Luis Elizondo, who was, he worked at the Pentagon, and his job, he worked for the office, he was the head of the office to look into UFOs, or what they called them was UAPs, unidentified area phenomena. He has just lodged a complaint with the inspector general saying that, he's being under attack and they're trying to smear him within certain aspects of the Pentagon. So you got to look into that one too. So he's just formally lodged a complaint. So he feels, and now you can see, before we get to when Congress, when the Pentagon reports to Congress, we're already having a problem where it's not just they're all on the same team to get this information. If they're going after him, Luis Elizondo, there's clearly, and he wouldn't do what he's doing, a lifer, somebody who worked in part of the, the Defense Department, his whole career, or at least especially, with ATIP later, he's not going to talk about and do things that he doesn't have certain blessings on. Yeah. So obviously he's being rooted on by certain people. Do what you do. I'm proud of you. I want you to go out there and tell it. But then you got some other guys in that same building who are going, nah, bro, I don't want you, I don't want you talking about this. I don't want you, I'm going to, if you think that you're just going to get away with it, I'm going to smear you. And that goes back to Philip Corso. If anybody wants to know what's going on and what's basically happening, it all goes back to the 1960s when all of these departments were built up inside the Pentagon. And I started to do research, like, how did the Pentagon become a thing? Anyway, it kind of break down. You can wiki it, and they break down how there was another building that everybody was in, but the Pentagon is just not just one thing. There's a lot of different people who work for different people in the Pentagon. And that was always the issue for Philip Corso, because he explains that the Air Force had, they had some of the craft that crashed because they inherited it as being the Air Force. They had it on the bases. The Army, they had their own information. The Army, the Navy, they had their own information. And they were all trying to keep their information kind of from each other. Yeah. And everybody was trying to keep it away from the CIA because they felt like the CIA was going to give it to the Russians. That's the. And then so most people wouldn't understand what that means. What they're saying is there's so much information trading in the spy game. Information can just be given over that you might not want to be given over, but they'll get other information in exchange, they believe. So that's the way kind of the spy games work, right? I mean, they trade information. And also, with that said, Philip Corso also said that, our intelligence agencies were infiltrated by KGB. And, that's a whole nother beast in itself that you can get into. And if you become like a huge fan of the whole Cold War era, but that's something he details in his book. You may think that book when you read The Day After Roswell, you might think that book is just all about, spaceships and what they look like and all the rumors and all the, dude, he goes so deep into the politics because he worked, as I broke down to you, he worked for all these people. He worked at all the highest levels in foreign technology. He was a part of the military. He wore a civilian suit as even being in the military, a civilian suit to the Pentagon. He even worked in the White House. So he would know about all the intricacies of the government. And he explained, you might think when you think of the Pentagon that it's just one, thing that when you walk in there, it's all part. He's like, no, dude, they all have their own, everybody has their own desires. They have their own mission. They have their own things that they want. So we may have conflicting things, and those conflicts he details very well in his book. So many details, and like I said, quoting like Bob Lazar. This is all so incredible. I mean, let me just point out one thing that's very important. And the one thing I want to point out is he has a chapter about the hostile intentions and the other Cold War. And when he refers to the other Cold War, he means with UFOs. He talks about how the technology that they got from some of the crashes, they used to develop better weapons, better technology, and eventually, if I mentioned in the last podcast, SDI, the Strategic Defense Initiative, which was a really big, huge budget. I think rooted in back in the Nixon days, but really hit its peak with Ronald Reagan, which was later called Star Wars for short. And I think he got that from, of course, the movie.
I think
so.
I remember you talking about that a little bit.
Yeah, and I only touched on it, but in reality, he talks about what they thought. You know, to the naked eye, people would believe that we were preparing and advancing our technology solely for the use of defending ourselves against the Russians during the Cold War. But the reality was that we were doing this to get the Greys out of here. They didn't want them, you know. He said that they were poking at their defense. They were penetrating our airspace. They would come in and they would basically try to figure out our defenses. They wanted to see our response times. They wanted to see what kind of weapon they had. As he puts it, let me just read exactly how he says it. He goes through the EBEs. Those are called. That's a term. The extraterrestrial biological entities, if I can remember correct. We were that prey, and we knew they were monitoring our defenses, surveilling the aircraft. We scrambled to chase them, and hovering above the experimental satellites we launched. We could see them with our radar. I had seen them on our scopes with my own eyes, and we knew their presence wasn't benign. But they had an advantage over us that we couldn't overcome unless we acquired technological ability to put up enough defense to make their cost too high to engage in any large-scale warfare. Not only was it an advantage that forced us to scrape whatever technology we could offer, that we could edge off our encounters with them, it was one of the many factors that forced us into silence about alien presence. If there was no public enemy, there would be no pressure from the public to do anything about it. So we simply denied all extraterrestrial activity because no aliens meant no military responsibility to counter their threat. But all the while, we were still planning and measuring. So that's just a touch of how they view from a military perspective. And then he continues, and I'm skipping, there's no way I can go through the whole book, but I'm skipping to parts that I was like, dude, I have to share this. He goes, in an only tactically acknowledged cooperative endeavor, the Soviets and the Americans, while each one was explicitly using the Cold War to gain advantage over the other, both sought to develop military capability to defend ourselves against extraterrestrials. There were very subtle indications that this policy in the types of weapons both countries develop, as well in our behavior toward one another, each time one side came closer to pushing the button. I can tell you definitely, because I was there when we avoided nuclear war, because both military commands were able to pull back when they stared over the cliff into the flaming volcano of war that threatened to engulf all of us at least 4 times between 1945 and 1975. The Berlin airlift, the Chinese invasion of Korea, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and the Yom Kippur War, and probably many more. By the time President Nixon returned from China, having agreed to turn over Vietnam to the communists. He had effectively turned the Soviets' flank in the Cold War. For the next decade, the Soviets felt caught between the Chinese, with whomever they fought border wars in the past, and the United States. When Ronald Reagan demonstrated to Mikhail Gorbachev that United States was capable of deploying an efficient anti-missile defense system and sought Soviet cooperation against turning against the extraterrestrials, all pretext of the Cold War ended, and the great Soviet monolith in the Eastern Europe began to crumble. But the Cold War worked. And he continues to go into that deeply, talking about how they were trying to stop the ETs, or the EBEs, as he described them, from having, and he said in some chances they got lucky and they were able to shoot them down. Sometimes they couldn't, wow. I believe to this day. Here's another good, cool thing that you may think about that we can point out. He points out that they were aware that they were abducting some of our people. He said, well, in a vast majority of cases, they were delusions or there was some other thing going on and it wasn't an actual, abduction. But in some cases, there was an abduction. And he said they weren't able to stop that. But they did, after they got certain technology to improve the defense, the American space, especially with satellites and being able to root out their bases, they were able to kick them out of not only out of the United States, but they were able to make them back off from abducting people. Now, there's no way I could confirm that. I'm curious to see if there's been a reduction in encounters, but I know I don't see as many as when you watch your older your unsolved mysteries, and I was abducted, like the days of the old school days of watching sightings. It was like every other day there was somebody talking about an encounter, but apparently he says they were able to make them back off when they improved the technology of their defenses. So that was one cool thing. But I'll have there's several different stories where I read about people. Like there was one where there's a guy in I believe it was somewhere South America, but he was abducted, and he wasn't abducted and taken to space. He was taken to an underground. He said he was taken to, which correlates to everything in Charles, Hall's book and Philip Corso's book. He said he was taken to an underground base where they were building some smaller, scout crafts. And he said, the reason why we're showing you this is because we just want to convey that we're not here to hurt people. We're not here to disrupt other people's way of life. We're just using, this as a base of operations. And that allows them to, get where they're trying to go. So Earth is, although not special, as in, it can be populated, it is for our area. There's throughout the universe, there's tons of planets like ours, or at least habitable. But the Earth is a really good sweet spot if you're trying to get to another part, I guess, of our galaxy or another solar system. Clearly, we're the only planet in our solar system that has a habitable planet. So it comes natural. A lot of people were saying, if they're here, they want our resources, they want to steal our gold. Some say they want to steal our water. Some say, they want to steal our souls. They want to steal our DNA. While, some of these nuances could partly be true in some ways. Charles Hall explains that they work with the United States. They use the United States for the tall whites specifically, not the grays, to help them repair their ships. Help them, if they needed some repairs, they would manufacture it and they would give them the part. They just wouldn't let them do it. They would just take the part and say thank you, and they would put the part on their ship and go from there. And that was one of the ways they were able to get some technology from the tall whites, because they essentially created a way of some of codependence. And it's weird that both Charles and Philip Corso say fiber optic technology came from ETs. Now, of course, I couldn't prove that. I'm not going to try to assert that, but I thought it was interesting that they both came to that conclusion. And I think partly is because I believe that, Charles said he saw that for himself working with the tall whites, but he must also probably have gotten some of that information from Philip Corso's book. So as we can see over and over and over, there's a consistency that the militarization of space, the Space Force, has already said. They've said themselves that we're here, we're here to weaponize space. If you click on their mission statement, when you go on their website, the first thing they say is, they say, it says, we are the threats to cover great difference. Say space is a war fighting domain. They say in their first sentence, we will seize the opportunity. Space is a war fighting domain, and the threats that we face cover great distance and tremendous speeds. That's their site. That's what they say right here. This is media.defense.gov, their PDF. I'll read that one more time. As the only U.S. military service to be established during the information age, when they say great speeds, I think they're probably on the outside referring to, network speeds. The information age, the United States Space Force has a unique opportunity to be born digital. We will seize the opportunity. Space is a war-fighting domain, and the threats we face cover great distances at tremendous speeds. So, of course, we're talking about the information age that, we connect on, between data centers very quickly. Hackers from countries that work for the military can attack our infrastructure, have attacked our infrastructure. It's affected me sometimes. Some of the attacks have affected private companies that provide IT solutions that, affect not only government contracts, but, private use also. So I think the reality is that when you go through both books, you start to see, especially from Philip Corso's, he's like all militarization. He does not like the idea at all of ETs having any access to our space, our airspace. He says they've never perfected it. And then you look at what's going on today. There's clearly still, to this day, we have not perfected being able to outmaneuver ETs totally. They're still poking and prodding. If you would have read that book and you didn't get a year, you would have thought he was referring to today. Because the way we still have the TikTok UFO, there's three different ones: the flare video, or the FLIR video, the go fast video, and the gimbal video are all videos that the Pentagon released after they were leaked, on top of the Tic Tac UFO, on top of the drones. All these things are still coming, which show that we're still being poked and prodded. And then we try to sit there and say, and the last thing I wanted to say was, why would we sit here and say it can be another country? If we've already established these things move outside of conventional physics, are you telling me that this is what happened? This is what would have to happen in a scenario, right? I'm a scientist. I went and got a PhD in MIT, and I believe in the way Einstein taught physics, that you can't go beyond the speed of light. That's it. Conventional movement, we use rockets. You have NASA, who are still use rockets to get you into space. You need an immense amount of propulsion to get you into space and to move around, or of any speed. But I get hired for some secret project, right? And they say, okay, we're going to come make you work with the military. We're going to contract you to still be a civilian. But look, we've developed this secret technology, whether it's in China or you're Russia, I don't care where you are. We all have the same physics. They're not teaching different physics in China. They're not teaching different physics in Russia. We're all being taught the basic theories of the way things work based on the observations, and we share them throughout our university. But somehow you go to the military, they got this secret compartment where they developed a whole new physics. So you got to unlearn everything that you learned there, and then you got to learn the new physics. Now, I'm not saying that isn't true. I'm just saying it wouldn't make sense that it came about naturally. Because if it came about naturally, we would have in the civilian sector, within the public sector, we would have some way of understanding how anti-gravity propulsion works. In fact, we're still calling it propulsion, but it's not even really propelling. These things are moving without any sense of needing to accelerate. They're just here, and it's just going from 0 to 10,000 miles per hour, and in the instant that you need to do it. And this is based on all of the data. Luis Elizondo, who investigated these things, said this is what we're finding. The military is saying that this is not happening. They said it was happening for 2 years. It was happening every day. They said every day on the in the 60 Minutes thing. Yes, every single day
Yeah, I
for
remember
2
that.
years we were seeing these craft do this. So if it's every single day and it's beyond the concept of way we understand physics, how could it possibly be a secret project? The only way, I'm not saying it's not, but the only way that secret technology could even be accessed if it were given to us unnaturally. Nobody sat in a room and go, you know what? I just figured it out. Einstein had it all wrong. Newton had it all wrong. I mean, he had some things wrong, but they were all loonies. I had the real way of doing it, and the way I'm doing it means I'm going to have access to anti-gravity proportion, and the rest of you suckers can keep driving your cars and flying your rockets, NASA into space. If any of that was natural to our way of thinking, there is no secret that you could keep that no one else would be able to figure out. There's nobody on this planet that has the secret and got it naturally.
Yeah.
If we have that technology, if that technology is interfering or interacting with us, it came from somewhere else. I'm not going to begin to try to say where they got it. Certainly they have it.
Right.
And we think about that, it all makes sense.
Dude, I would say this.
So what do you think?
I would say this. If I was a pilot and I saw something like that, dude, I would. That lady, she said she didn't. What'd she do? She didn't open fire on any of them, or didn't
Right.
did right? She said she took precaution, or whatever
Right.
it was. But bro, no joke, I would have been like Cougar, dude. I would have freaked out. I'd want to get out of that plane ASAP, dude. Because that, to me, that's just like, bro, if I see a rattlesnake, I'm not used to seeing that, right? So imagine like
Right.
seeing something like that in the sky, moving in like these ways of like, holy crap, dude. Like, I don't know.
Right.
Dude, it's just, to me, it's just crazy. It's just, it's unreal. I don't know. For me, I would be a total, I'd be a total wuss about it. I'd be like, dude, I want to retire. I'm going home, man. I'm done.
And just let me say this to your point. I've had experience. I've seen the craft. I've seen the spaceships. Face to face. I've seen them.
Yeah.
But none of that has anything to do with the way I approach this, because it doesn't make any sense for me to do that. This is becoming a bigger picture, and when I experienced it, there was no way for me to explain it. I didn't have a technological description of how these things work. All I know is that when they showed up to me, and after I asked, and I asked for it to happen, they showed up, showed me the craft, they flew away. Now, do I use that as a basis for me saying that this is real? 100% not. That's a personal experience, and that personal experience only helps me, helps my ambition not to feel dissuaded by that, what we call, when you can, there's a basis for being, denial, a reasonable denial, where you can say, well, I haven't seen it, so I don't know. Well,
Right.
I've seen it. I've seen it face to face. Now, the fact that I've seen it face to face tells me, okay, if I can find some stories that are consistent enough, that correlate with other stories, then I have something to work with, and I can share that. My personal experience, I don't necessarily understand. I can't explain how they were able to understand me, how they were able to hear me, and to be able to, grant the request. And the request was craft, and it happened several times. Another thing they were able to do is they were able to make me look at them in the sky without me having prior knowledge they were there. So that was some sort of, control of me. And Charles, as you saw in Charles's documentary, they had equipment. They didn't have that innate power to do that. It seems like the Greys did, but on the other hand, the tall whites wore special equipment to be able to control and do certain things that way. And they also had certain weapons that were able to do that way. And oh my God, I've got to tell you this story. I've got to tell you this story that made me laugh, and I feel bad for laughing, and I wouldn't laugh at anybody else for this. And I feel bad admitting to the fact that I laughed, but I felt like I had to. And the reason why it was, you're listening to his story, and you could be listening for a whole hour, and he's not talking about anything ET, and then he jumps in and he goes into ETs. And that's what's so great about his book. Like you said, his books is that it's not just about AT experience. You can actually get bored with just having so much alien stuff, and you don't take a break and just relax and just kind of shoot the stuff. And that's what he does. He goes back and forth, so it keeps you excited. So what happens is, and this is an incredible story. This is actually my favorite story out of all of this, and it actually makes it an incredible detail. So there was a guy named, he names Washington, right? And Washington was a really smart guy who was going to be a weather observer. And he said he was really smart, and he passed all these tests, these military tests, and he went to college, and they wanted to get him to the top. They said, but there's a problem with him. And the problem that he has is kind of what, and this was in the 60s, I would probably thought of today, and I could be 100% wrong, but it reminds me of somebody who is of a high functioning on the spectrum, autism, because he's very, very, very smart. And he's a really sweet guy, but he doesn't really have a discernment. So what he said was, in the book, he's like, yeah, they need me to kind of teach him to be a little bit more tact, to kind of carry yourself in a way where you know what to do and what not to do. So basically, he said, for example, like say the janitor at the Air Force, he's in the base, right? If the janitor walked up to him and said, "Hey man, can you finish mopping the bathroom for me?" And he, "Oh sure," he'll do it. He'll go and do it. So that, he was a guy like that. He was really sweet, but he didn't have any sense of discernment. So they were like, "Dude, Charles, we need you to the way you are. You're cool. You're real fun, but you can also help him out. Get him meet some ladies, take him to Vegas, hang out, have some fun with him, and then teach him the ropes. Teach him how to be a reasonable and sound-founded person." He's like, cool. So, oh my God, and and I'm like, dude, I felt like when I'm first reading this, I'm like, dude, this can't go good, right? Like you guys put him out there where all this is going on, but anyway, so what happened was he gets the call, right? And then one day he's got, I think Charlie has to get away from range for, wherever those ranges are where they're out there. He has to go to another base, and then he gets called up, and then they send Washington there, and he has to do it. So then he gets a call from Washington, and he's panicking. He's like, what's going on, Washington? He's like, there's a plane crash. He goes, what? He said, yeah, you got to, there's a plane crash. I see some people out there. They're way out there though. I need to go help them. And then Charlie automatically goes, "Oh crap!" Right? I don't think this. He's thinking, this is he's probably seeing the tall whites out there, and his brain is not computing it. He's like, dude, I'm gonna go out there and go help him. I see it. It's like fire out there. I'm gonna go. So he tells, because and the rule is don't go out there alone. I don't know if you remember from the documentary, nobody can go out there alone. So he goes, please listen to me. You're all alone, Washington. Don't go out there alone. I don't have time to explain. He says, I don't have time to explain, Charlie. And he continued. He wasn't listening. His mind was racing. Those people out there need me. It looks like they're going to start burning. I see smoke and dust out over there. It looks like a large airliner. It has already lost its wings. The tail section is already broken off. It's already big enough to have 100 and 150 people on board. I have to go out and save them, Charlie. I have to go. I need to go save them from the flames. Send me help as soon as you can. You're the only person I have time to phone. I need your help. I'm depending on you. And then he hung up. And then he said, I could tell that he didn't listen to Charlie. He tell his mind was already gone. He went out there into the empty desert. He's like, it's already the desert, dude. Like me being out here, I know that you can't play around with just going out there by yourself on anything. They could have, but it was a beautiful day. So he calls, he knows that what's probably going on, but he calls anyway to the Desert Center Control Tower. And he's like, hey, do you guys have, any reports of plane crashes? And they're like, no. He calls the hospital. Does anybody have a plane? No. And, and then he says, he said, okay, we're not sending out any emergency help because there's no report of anything. So he knows it was screwed. And he knew what happened. So, and he knows how the tall whites are. You go out there not carrying yourself the proper way. So anyway, he gets down there. He ends up getting down there, and he goes, he gets a, so it was about 11:45 a.m. and it was Steve. He sounded serious. He said, sorry it took me so long to call, but first we had to talk to Washington. And he goes, what is it, Steve? He said, is Washington there? He said, oh, he's there, all right, Charlie. And then he said, it's a mighty good thing that you called us down to get him, because he went and called somebody else. He wasn't near there. Charlie was too far to help him, so he sent some people that were down there to go help him. He said, to begin with, you can cancel your aircraft emergency. There weren't any accidents up there. That's what Steve said. And he said, well, Charlie said, well, what about Washington? Well, he said, you better tell the major to send an experienced replacement like you were paying, and not to expect any more wind reports for the day. Doug and I will bring Washington down as soon as he's able to travel. He's not going to be able to make that trip alone. He says, what is it? Has he been hurt? He said, yeah, Charlie, they hurt him bad. Uh-oh. They did something to him. It looks like they burned him up on his forehead. And that was something that's a repeated thing that goes on in the book, where they zap people who go out there and they go out there tripping, not able to be able to, contain themselves. They have this zap thing, kind of like a phaser. He said maybe his mind will snap out of it when he gets some rest with you down at Desert Center. So they get him back. He said Doug and I got there like you asked. When we drove up, his truck was parked in front of the shack with the engine running. He was hysterical with terror. The door on the driver's side of his truck was open. He was sitting in his truck on the passenger side. So I think they were the ones who drove him back here. He hardly knew us when we got here. He said that when they saw us coming, they took off running. By the way, he explains they're able to run like super fast. In fact, when Charles didn't believe that they were able to run 30 miles per hour, he tried to figure out like if he can get himself to run even half that fast, just so he wouldn't think he was crazy. But he figured out later that these tall whites can run extremely fast, like faster than Usain Bolt, who I think is like 23 miles per hour. I could be wrong, but these dudes were running like 35 miles per hour. So he says, who's Steve? Who drove him back to the shack? He said, we went out there a little ways and we saw what he saw. It was the same thing that was chasing Payne a couple weeks ago. It's still over there in the hollow out in the desert. It's down in the sage bush. You can't see it from here, blah, 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 blah. So he goes and talks to Washington. And dude, it was epic when he says, and he tried to tell him, talk to me, Washington. What happened to you, man? I'll believe you. Whatever you saw, I've already seen. So he said, Washington stopped crying for a few minutes and began breathing deeply. And he started speaking very slowly and very deliberately and very quietly, in between his stammering and his tears. And he said, struggling to find himself, self-control. And he said, I was only trying to help them. I thought they were dying. I thought it was going to burn. I couldn't drive any further. The sagebrush was too thick out there. I got out. I ran on ahead. I went to save them from the fire. I got to the rise. At least I could see it. It lay there. It looked like a big airplane without wings or a tail. I shouted for them to get out before it burned. I shouted at it. I threw rocks at it. I tried to break the windows so the people could get out before it burned. But when I threw the rocks, it wouldn't even reach it. Suddenly the door opened and 4 monsters came running out at me. Oh. They were white and terrible. They were little angry mutants. They had claws and growled at me like angry coyotes. I couldn't run. They were all around me, growling and jumping. They ran all around me. I was trapped. Then a young white woman came running out. The monsters must have kidnapped her and made her their slave. They were terrible. She shouted at me in English. Somehow she knew what I was thinking. She was shouting, they are only playing with you. Run away. Don't help me. I couldn't leave her there. I couldn't leave her to those terrible monsters. I grabbed her arm. It was pure, white, and thin. They must have not have fed her. Then she began fighting me. She began growling at me like a coyote, like the terrible little monsters. I tried to run. I tried to take her with me. Then 2 men came running out of the fuselage. They were so angry. They almost killed me. I couldn't fight them. They were screaming at me in English, you idiot, you stupid idiot. Run, you idiot. Run for your life. I tried. God knows I tried to run, but I couldn't. I couldn't let go of the girl. I was going to leave her behind. I couldn't fight them. They were too strong. They had claws and they growled at me like angry dogs and horses. I had to leave her behind. I tried to turn, but the monsters were everywhere. There was nothing I could do. The monsters were in the way. I grabbed one of them. I slapped one of them out the way. Then the man got so angry, I couldn't think anymore. I was so helpless. One of the men took out a little square white pencil and he burned me.
Whoa.
He pointed it right in my forehead and he burned me. It hurt so bad. I was helpless. I couldn't think anymore. I couldn't tell what was happening anymore. The man got so angry. I couldn't think anymore. I was so helpless. One of the men took out a little square pencil and he burned at me. Then he goes, then he grabbed me and started dragging me toward my truck. Then he dropped me in the sand. And then one of them got in my truck while the other screamed at me in English. I was lying there on the ground crying. I was so terrified. I was begging them not to kill me. The one by me was screaming, "You stupid pig. You are not supposed to be out here today. They are only playing. You hit the little girl. We will kill you for that. You grabbed the teacher. Do you think she's helpless? Do you think we're fools? Do you think we bring her out here with no weapons? She should have killed you. I intend to kill you myself as soon as the captain lets me." They brought my truck and jammed me into the passenger seat. One man got into the driver's seat and the other climbed into the back. They started taking me down toward the road toward range 4. The girl saved my life. She ran over to the truck and growled something to both of them. Then she shouted at me, "The little girl is going to be all right, so we are going to let you live. Don't ever come here again. We will kill you if you ever come out here again. Do you hear me? We will kill you." Then the girl stayed behind. We have to find it said, we have to find her. We have to rescue her. I was helpless. They had me in the truck. I was out of my mind. They looked all white with large blue eyes, blonde hair, and claws. They drove me back to the shack. They screamed at me all the way. The man used a pencil on my forehead again and again. The pain was awful. I couldn't stand the pain. He was screaming,
crap.
"Are you going to get out of here? Are you going to get out of here?" I couldn't take it anymore. I was screaming and I was begging for my life. I passed out in the truck. When I came to, Steve was there. Thank God I called you, Charlie. Thank God Steve was there. I can't take the pain anymore, Charlie. I'm going to the neurosurgeon. Thank God you were here, Charlie. I'm hurt real bad, way deep down inside my head. I can't think anymore. I have to go to the neurosurgeon. I was doing all the helping, Charlie. And all I did was run ahead so I can help them. I just wanted to save them from the fire. With that, he turned slowly and left the building. I could see him stumbling slowly across the parking lot towards the hospital. He seemed to still be crying, still in abject terror. That was the last time I ever saw Washington. The rumor on the base was that the neurosurgeon gave him 6 months of R&R leave to be taken to his hometown back in Ohio. Incredible story, man. That was probably my favorite story because it captured not only, the innocence of this guy who just thought he was trying to help, but it also captured a really, really specific way to look at these ETs. They basically cussed the guy out, right? They burned him over and over. They beat his, lack of a better word, they beat his ass all the way back to wherever they wanted to leave him. And it was all because, again, they were very protective. They didn't want him messing around. They knew he wasn't supposed to be out there if he couldn't handle it in the first place. And I think, honestly, he was just, I think he may have been something that we would have given a diagnosis to today. Even the guy that you saw him talking about in the documentary of being all fresh from LA, wearing he had on a very fresh uniform. And remember, he tells Charlie, "Hey, give me the keys." Did the cook give you the keys? He's like, "No, the cook didn't give me the keys to the shack. Why would the cook have the keys?" And then he goes, he's like, we got to give him the winds. And he's like, what are the winds we're going to give him? We're going to give him, 4 miles per hour. Yeah, 4. The government loves the number 4. He actually names a chapter. The chapter he names where he describes that whole story, he calls it 4 is the government's number. He says the government loves that number. He's like, you can't do 3. They don't like 3 and they don't like 5. They love 4. And he also, what happened was he asked them, I guess he ended up asking them about, because he told him, everybody can tell him don't go out there alone, have 2 people, right, and don't go to range 4. Make up the weather, never say you were down there. Because he kept saying, can you show me range 4? And they were like, nobody goes there. And he really didn't want to show him, but he was like, dude, I need to see it. I want to see it. So he was going to leave him there. He didn't want to go out there, but he had a similar mental breakdown at the end of that chapter where he mentioned, range 4 Harry, because he said, why don't you want to go out there? What are you scared of? He's like, is that what, range 4 Harry? And as soon as he said that name, the guy, had a breakdown, and he called him up, same sort of reaction as Washington. So most people who experienced this just couldn't handle it, wasn't mentally prepared.
Yeah.
But that's a fascinating thing, dude. I think it's fascinating.
And dude, the thing that's crazy is, imagine how we would react if they saw, if the tall whites or whatever saw something on our side that looked threatening, and they were trying to save us.
Right.
Well, I mean, what would we do? Would we react the same way? Because it sounds like, because he even said, he goes, yeah, I was frightened. He says it a lot. He says it quite a bit,
right.
even towards the end of the, during he's talking about his time there. He's always like, I was terrified. I was scared, and it was crazy for him to just to let the audience know like where he was at, because there wasn't anything where I was like, yeah, one of them kind of, because I remember he said he was looking through a binoculars or a telescope or something, and one of them kind of came in and like, or he was looking outside, one of the two, and they kind of like looked at the telescope too because he wanted to see what he was looking at.
Right.
But he got freaked out because dude, she came in like a stealthy, and it freaked him out. So it's like, yeah, dude, I don't know, man. I just don't think anyone's it's so funny at the end of it, I was like, well, if it ever comes to the point where they want to introduce themselves or they want to meet or whatever it may be, I feel like what's his name, Charles? He should be the spokesperson or whatever it may be. You know what I mean? Because it just seems like I mean, I don't know who else. I don't know if anybody else has these similar stories or have confronted or even been like, oh no, yeah, they were cool or whatever. But it seems like he was pretty chill with whoever was around. But I don't know. I haven't read the book, so maybe there are some stories where it's like he kind of went over the line.
Well, remember, okay, yeah, to your point, yeah, he was always terrified. And like you said, because he explained that they had some equipment, they were able to actually hover, especially the children. And a couple reasons why he was afraid. One of the reasons, like you said, they would sneak up on him, right? Yeah. And a lot of times they would be kids and they would be like jet quiet. Two is how protective the guards were, that would, they would kill you if you, because of their nervous system, they would just, shoot you down in a second if you reacted the wrong way, or they'll burn you. So he was always terrified, and he didn't want to make a wrong move. He didn't want to offend. He didn't want to make them feel unsafe. So a lot of times, so again, that goes to just, you really begin to see that it was almost like a zoo relationship. And that's something we have to keep in mind too. We're going to want, if this ever becomes open relationship, as Americans, we tend to want that respect. But then there also is going to be sort of a sense of, they're going to have a sense of superiority over us. That they can hurt us, they can kill us, they can do this to us. They have the weaponry to do it. So there has to be, like you said, there has to be a new respect. And he's explains throughout the book how the generals will be walking with them. So of course he's not the only one who's experienced them. He's just been the first, and he explains throughout the book how the reason why he was able to explain all of this and tell his story is because it wasn't classified, and it was at the request and the order of the teacher and the tall whites that it doesn't be classified. They wanted him to allow him to tell his story because they were so appreciative of the way he's handled himself, and they expected the Pentagon to abide by that, and they did. So I think that there's a lot, as you begin to see, you're going through the same thing I'm going through right now. It's an epiphany. It's a sense of, this is much more practical than I thought. And if it's that much more practical, I have 1,000 more questions in terms of how we approach this moving forward. What is our relationship going to be like? How many different races? Like you said, the Norwegians with 24 teeth, he even explains them having a relationship. It's funny, he said something interesting. He said, why when we look at the past and we try to look into the ancient alien things, what we try to do is we try to go find people with superior technology back then. He says, why don't we do the opposite? Why won't we look at the people who landed here and they landed here not having resources, so they had to live more primitive than everybody else. Those are the people that you should be looking at because they didn't come here with an advanced civilization. They came here with, minimal resources. Sometimes their spaceships crashed, and he actually talks in detail about their landing process and how mistakes can cause them to crash. He also talks about how there has to be a certain they can only land during a certain time of the day or certain periods because of the way where the orbit of the around the sun. I have to go back through that point, but I was fascinated by that too. He really goes in deep about how they have to schedule lands, and I think it was about every 2 weeks they can have a certain type of landing, and they have to schedule it correctly. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of moving parts, not just with the technology, for the relationships, the personalities. He talks about how the Greys, one of the reasons the Greys, the mostly children that we interact with, is because the children find the Earth is a little bit more. It's anybody. The Earth is the same for anybody who comes here and experiences it. You have a certain amount of gravity. You can exercise. You can get out. You can experience it. As opposed to the moon, he said most of the adult ETs, their base, they have a base of operations or a point of presence, if you will, on the moon. When I say point of presence, it's not their home. It's not necessarily where they want to be, but it can be between other places. And sometimes they do live their lives here. But he says as they get older, they can't live on Earth. They have a certain breathing apparatus that they need to have, and that breathing apparatus is very difficult and it's not comfortable. So as the teenage Greys, they don't like the idea of getting older and living on Earth. It's a really depressing idea for them that they're gonna. It's like being told that you're for sure gonna have terrible asthma when you're 30. Basically, for them. Another important point he makes about the tall whites. He says they live 10 times as long as us. That they live to about 700 years old.
Right.
So he has a great question Q&A, and that Q&A he answers questions about them, and I think a lot of people would appreciate the Q&A, because one question he goes, why don't you have any photos of the tall whites? He says initially I was too terrified to even consider a picture. Later, though, I saw the people I call the tall whites many times, practically on a daily basis, during the 2 years plus I was stationed at Indian Springs. I never wanted to upset them. Their responses were unpredictable. I was simply wanted to stay alive while doing my job. And he says, they said, why don't you include any drawings of the tall whites in your books? He says, I have a tremendous amount of respect for the extraterrestrials I call the tall whites. Each individual is unique as we are. I don't want to promote a stereotype or worse, a caricature when a movie on the Millennium Hospitality series is in works. I naturally will consult with directors, producers to ensure that the tall whites are presented in the world in an accurate manner.
Wow.
Did they come from another dimension? They had vehicles that clearly were able to travel faster than the speed of light. And he says in some other parts, 25 times or more. I had no indication that other dimensions or time travel was involved or even possible. That's interesting. Tell us more about time travel faster than the speed of light. Traveling faster than the speed of light. So I'm convinced there is more to physics than Einstein delineated. I am convinced that there are more physically real force fields and more ways to transfer and store energy than Einstein was aware for. Scientists today do have problems with experimental results that seem variance with Einstein. Please read the paper on the Hall photon theory and an appendix. So he has his own theories. I'm not going to go into that. In fact, I'm not a physicist to even cross-examine that. Did the tall whites believe in God? Did they give you warnings about the future of our planet? The tall whites clearly understood the concept of God. They appear to live by the golden rule. They never came to conduct philosophical discourse with me. They were more interested in practical matters. I did not, however, notice anything about them or their behavior that contradicted my own Roman Catholic religion. And he goes on a lot about his, being Catholic. Were the tall whites involved in creating alien human hybrids? The tall whites live 10 times longer than we do. They notice that we heal faster than they do when we have an injury, but overall they seem quite content and proud to be who they were. I received no indication that they will be remotely interested in such a venture. I understand history is a great interest in yours. After observing world events for half a century, what do you think about the current level of American technology? Thank you for asking. I believe that American technology is now approaching the level used by the second type of extraterrestrial beings that I personally met. I referred to them in the Millennial Hospitality 3. I called them the Norwegian with 24 teeth. I believe that the Norwegians with 24 teeth have been coming here to Earth from a very close nearby star for many years. I believe that America is working closely with both the Norwegians as well as the tall whites. I believe that we are actively helping the Norwegians with 24 teeth build a spaceport, which will provide them a reliable way to land and repair, refurbish their own worn out ships and return to their planet. I believe that their facilities require a large, flat, open area to proper northern latitude. For example, on the northern plains of the North America here, or perhaps out on the Russian steppes. There are many large, flat, open areas at an ideal latitude for their facility. For the tall whites telepathics, the tall whites had communication equipment in their helmets, which enabled them under certain conditions to read my thoughts or plant thoughts in my mind. If they were not using their communication equipment and not taught themselves to speak English, we were reduced to reduced to using hand signals because their vocal cords could produce sounds too high for the human ear, and their hearing picked up sounds too high for the human ear. It would be easy to think that they communicated telepathically with each other because of their pitches or the signals that they picked, or the frequencies rather.
Right.
The tall whites had suits which enabled them to levitate, but they were not supernatural. They simply understood the real physics, the real physical world that we live in much better than Einstein did. Although the tall whites lived 10 times longer than we do, they did get sick, they did eventually die, and they were vigilant about avoiding injuries. So that was, I just wanted to share with you that walk through the Q&A with him. And there's a ton more. He talks about their ships, incredibly long, detail. And I love it. And it just provides, if you're interested, I just record this small part for you. He said the smaller of the deep spacecraft sometimes came in early, 1 or 2 nights before the night of the full moon, and sometimes late, 1 or 2 nights after the night of the full moon. However, unless they were having some type of emergency, they always chose to land on the trailing side of the earth, i.e. at or near sundown. So, if anybody wants to hear more details, and I recommend, and let me give you guys the book that focuses in on that, if you want those details, because the first Millennial Hospitality book does not go into that, and there's 6 books, and if you don't want to spend money, trying to get to all those books, it should be in 4, After Hours. Millennial Hospitality After Hours 4 is where he spends a great deal of time talking about their ships, Q&A, so that you can get the details. If you just want to hear about all of the great interactions, the stories, like with Washington, I believe that one's in 3 or 2. If you want to hear about other things, and the one thing about their frequent trips in Vegas, I believe that's in 6. The Grays is in 5, where he details in such an amazing way about the Grays and about them being, and I felt sympathy as he talked about the crash. Never have you ever felt sympathy about the Roswell crash, but when you think, like, especially when you go back and you read Corso's, and he says, the reports on the ground were that the soldiers felt the emotions of the dying alien, of them feeling not only bad for his own dying, but he was still devastated by the death of the young kids that died, under his watch, basically. And he's just an older teenager. So all of those things are incredible. And he talks about in Vegas. And one more thing I'm going to point out too, that's incredible, that it made me think of an incredible realization, or a possibility, or a speculation. But he talks about in Vegas, how they would love the Stardust Hotel and they would go gamble there. And he said that the Greys love to gamble. Yeah, when he says the Greys love, not the Greys, not the tall whites love to gamble. He's, he said they love art, they love music. They thought human women's fashion. They love their fashion. This was in the 60s. So I was thinking of like that movie Mars Attack was great because that was like based on sort of that 60s retro look. And I was just thinking about it's like, dude, this is the 60s. Is going on. I can only imagine like a tall white alien woman dressing in a 60s dress, and but they would like walk into the desert. Like they didn't drive cars or anything. They would just like walk into the desert and they would walk off and they could run 35 miles per hour and get to their area. But he would say like there would be a weird thing where they would like he would go into the Stardust Hotel and they were all there. But he would notice what they would do is they would have like their own secret service kind of watching their women in there as they kind of gambled and read the minds. And they would, they, of course, and you think about it like, dude, these dudes have they have equipment to like read minds and their gambling ability would be much better, right? They would be able to know everybody's hand. So, but he said when they were in there, the dealer, the poker dealer would be someone from the Pentagon, like somebody from the CIA or like, military. It wouldn't be, whenever they would come in, they would swap them out. They would bring out a regular dealer and replace them with a somebody who's who knows what's what. And that was pretty deep. And you know what that got me thinking? I'm like, dude, this whole Men in Black thing, it makes so much more sense because the movie Men in Black was based on, of course, real adaptions. And then you think, Will Smith, I don't know if anybody knows, but when Will Smith talks about UFOs, right? Because he did both Men in Black and he did he also did, of course, our favorite Independence Day. Mm-hmm. And he says, when he took his son Jaden to meet Obama, and he said, Jaden said to Will, he's like, dude, I'm gonna ask him. And he's like, boy, you better not ask him. He's like, dude, I'm gonna ask him. I don't care what you say, Dad. And he goes, Mr. Obama, the UFOs, right? What's up with them? And but what really got me is not the conversation between Obama and Jaden. It's what Will Smith kind of throws in there. When he said Jaden was going to ask, the president about UFOs, he said, well, I already know all that. They already briefed me. They already told me what's up when I was doing the 2 movies. And the thing about that was that he must have gotten some information about, because the Men in Black, although it's a silly, goofy, and, it's a parody, there are some things in there, the suggestions about the way things kind of work. And you think about the way the relationship it is between the Pentagon and the tall whites and them being undercover at the Stardust Hotel as Blackjack, wearing suits. He said these were aliens, though. These were tall whites who would guard the other women wearing, all black suits, but they looked different, obviously. And he could tell by looking at them that they weren't just regular people. So, and I'm like, dude, this kind of gives me an insight to it gives me an impression about the Men in Black. All those stories are so out there. You can't necessarily put your finger on it because they're like, they would come up and they would, either make me forget about something or, time would go by, or they would threaten me and tell me not to talk about this. And, they seemed to just disappear. I didn't see where they went. They were wearing all black and they left in a black car. And, and we can't really necessarily have everybody, if you watch all these MIB documentaries having nothing to do with the movie, people can't tell if they're alien. They can't tell if they're human. Sometimes they look like they couldn't possibly be human. Yeah. And some of these people were credibly saying, after I saw a UFO, they popped up. Well, this gives you a whole new light and a whole new perspective of looking at the MIB. Perhaps they are, ETs who may be working to keep their nature of their not existence, but, their movements sort of on the low. I can understand that they don't necessarily want people, as you said yourself, aware of them because the way they panic and the way they kind of speak too much. It might be some ETs, and not necessarily say they represent all ETs. As we can see, the Greys and the tall whites, according to him, they don't even get along with each other. So I'm not saying that anything represents the whole thing. I think this is going to be a lot more complicated. There's going to be a lot more nuance than we first expected, and we got to stop watching these not watching, but we got to really be skeptical when we watch these documentaries on UFOs and ET, and to think that their explanation explains it all. It may explain a very small aspect of this, but I'm starting to see and realize there are so many moving parts. There are so many ways that this can go. It's impossible to just get all of this in one thing. These 6 books that I just read are overwhelming in information, though they're very important books. There's more out there, and I got to still, and I'm in books that I've already read that I used to, this sounds stupid because this doesn't make sense. This doesn't go along with the narrative that I accepted and that I like. Now I go back and I read it and I go, this makes perfect sense now. It correlates with everything that Corso has been saying, and it correlates with some of the things that that Charles Hall is saying. And I'm concerned. I've never been more concerned in my life, because the way I used to think of this? I used to think that they can just come in a mothership, just like Independence Day, shut everybody down, not let anybody do anything that they don't want them to do, and the military can't do anything. Yeah, some aspects of that might be true, but this is much more difficult, more complicated than that. This is much more. There are some vulnerabilities they may have. There may be some technologies that we have to make it difficult for them to do it and give us the confidence to kind of fight back and tell them to get back. And on the other hand, there's going to be some chaos because not everybody in the government is fully briefed on this. Not even the military. You got pilots out there who have no idea what they're looking at. Then you got some guys who's keeping secret file cabinets full of this stuff. So, this is all compartmentalated, split up, and this chaos and quote unquote controlled chaos, and these families who have been able to keep this, because you get in the military, you become a general. You didn't just graduate from college, become a general. You more likely had somebody a family member in the military before you to be able to get that consideration, to be able to get that trust. So these families who have that special access have likely been keeping each other in that. Luis Elizondo said the reason he said this from his own mouth. You can see that in his interview. He said, I brought this to some generals. And you know what they said? He said, they said, I'm not, you know what this is, right? He goes, no, what is this? He said, they said, it's demons. He said, do you read the Bible? And he said, yeah, but huh? He said,
demons.
It's demons. And then he says, and he walks off. And then the guy walks away and he goes, this is a general, 4-star general, right? Like, how do we address this issue when you got he said this several different ways and several different times, but he said that also very recently in different ways, that people's religious beliefs, not just your everyday going to work guy, but there's people in high places who have very strict religious beliefs. They're not going to contend well with this. I mean, I've personally spoken to a lot of people who call them demons, right? I mean, if you're super religious, you're ultra orthodox, there's a chance that you're going to say that these are demons. I mean, but unfortunately, that's just the way we are. We have that problem between humans. It's going to just only exacerbate itself when we start talking about ETs from another planet. It's going to be very hard for us to contend with that. So we're going to be split. It's chaos trying to figure out, just as we have many groups on Earth who have different feelings about ETs, there's probably going to be different groups of ETs within each race who's going to have different feelings about us.
Yeah.
It's just going to complicate things. I used to play, I have all these games. I have all these space games like Endless Earth, these games where you choose a faction and then your planet, and then you have the faction that describes each faction. Like, this is the faction that's a military faction. This is the money faction. They're good with the economy. This is the trade faction. This is the science faction. I was like, dude, this will be, this is not like real ET. And now I'm like, this is exactly like real ETs. So a lot of things we've been exposed to, and Corso, he talks about that too. He goes, man, a lot of things we've already put out there, and that goes with James, not James Cameron, Grant Cameron, or Cameron Grant. Either way, he's been talking about this, and I think a lot of what he was saying was based on Philip Corso's book, because it sounds exactly like that. And he talks about how the way that they disclose is they put information out there, and they'll let somebody go out there and talk about it and let them do it, and then go back and say, no, it was, that didn't really happen. They're not even doing that anymore. That was the way they used to do it, where they'll let somebody go out and say it, then they'll deny it. But at least it gets people conditioned, and then they use movies. We already know that Independence Day film had real military technical advisors on the film, just like Alan Hynek was a technical advisor for Close Encounters of the Third Kind. These movies that we're seeing, we think they're just the action directors and Steven Spielberg's, but they have technical directors that are often in the military briefing them. They even said that during the making of Independence Day, they would have them, the military guys would have them change things. No, we don't want that like that. Don't put that in that. Don't put that in that. So the finished product that you get maybe from the from a lot of the advice from military and other technical advisors. So this is deep, and it's really affecting me, and I'm overwhelmed by the amount of information that I have to review again, and the information that is coming in while all of this is going on in real time with these release of these videos. And I'm hoping by everything I've just shared tonight that everybody becomes much more they become much more eager to find out more and start looking into this more, and they feel empowered, and now they have more information and they have more of a practical stance. Because before tonight you might have had an impression of something way out there, way different, weirder, not making any sense. But now that I've given you the practical guide, the alien to ETs, you can approach this and not go in blind, or not go in at the mercy of what somebody wants to become official, what official information is given out to you. Because as we know, we understand now after COVID that things are slow in a bureaucracy, and when things are slow coming from a bureaucracy, people panic. And my fear is that at some point when this really hits the fan, and at the slow movement of the way our government works, people are going to start buying up toilet paper, guns, ammo, gas, and just out of panic, not even out of need. Because that's what it was last time. I mean, what the hell did toilet paper do for you during COVID? You just sneezing too much? So
yeah, dude.
It's crazy, man. So what do you think? Do you think that this would help you?
Oh, dude.
Approach the subject better?
Well, here's the thing. Let me backtrack to the documentary. Everyone's got, I won't say everyone, but if you're interested in it, I highly recommend watching it. Don't pay attention to the reviews, because, dude, when I saw the review, I was like, dude, 2.5 stars. I was like, dude, what the hell is this dude want me to watch?
Right.
And dude, watching, and after I was done, I was like, how is this 2.5 stars? The Bob Lazar one, dude, I turned it off.
Right.
That was just
right.
horrendous. It was boring. and dude, I think what it was, I'm not a real big fan of the director, whatever his name is. I don't know what it is. I just feel like he's kind of in it to be like, oh, I know this guy. I'm cool with him or whatever. And it's like, that's why I think I loved this documentary so much, just because the director wasn't involved, his buddies weren't involved, the news weren't involved. Right. It wasn't like this. Dude, the only person that was hyping this whole thing up was himself. Right. And he wasn't even trying to be a hype man. All he was doing was just telling you a story, and and his experiences before he went out to war.
Right.
But dude, it was fascinating, man. It was very interesting how much knowledge he was throwing out, and I like the fact that towards the end they even did kind of like an update of like what's happening now and what he thinks of it. And he goes, that's them. That's who I encountered. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. But the thing that's a trip is he even like he goes and does talks. I mean, I don't know if he's doing it now, but he was going out and doing, conventions or whatever. And he says, I get a mix of both worlds, where it's like, I get somebody who's hyper and wants to talk to me, and I get somebody who is going to question everything about me, and we'll have a conversation. And I love that. I love the fact that he's going to sit down with someone and talk to him about it. So highly recommend it. And it's, dude, and I think the thing that's so puzzling to me is the fact that the videos that have been kind of showing up, it's weird how when the whole COVID thing started, dude, like 2 months in, they dropped that whole, like, the government, whoever, the Pentagon, whoever it is, as dressing that there's these, I don't know. Am I supposed to say UFO? I don't know. Am I supposed to say that? I know it's kind of like a big,
whatever you want to say. Yeah, I mean, I love them both.
Yeah, I do too. But I think it's a trip that nobody cared, and it was so odd to me, man. And I remember watching that video. I'm like, holy crap, dude, this is weird. And then all this stuff like started coming. What's the pilot's name? Is it Favor or no?
Yeah, David Faber or Favor.
Yeah, when
Yeah.
he went on Rogan, I was like, oh, dude, this is so crazy. It's so crazy that I was like looking it up, and then he happened to be on the show, and I was like, dude, this is just a trip. But it's just weird how nobody's
It's funny
really nobody's paying attention to it. It's really odd to me.
you know what? I have an answer for that actually. It's funny, and it comes from both Charles his intro. So his wife does the intro, and it's so sweet. His wife does the intro to all his books. So she will do
Oh,
like
that's tight.
the forward, the intro, and then he'll start with the rest, right? And all of the books, and then she does that. She does that slow because she's old school. She does that. Go to www. Like I love it. Like you know what I mean, right? So
Yeah,
and I
I know
listen
what you
to all
mean.
of it. So she says what she says very interesting to me. She goes, and it was very important to me because I have the same. If you think you have this issue, I 100% have this issue. Somebody that's as passionate and obsessed with this is me. But and then I walk up to somebody else and they're like, "The hell is wrong with you?" So what she says is her response to all this information was that he says, Marie wasn't terribly interested in whether or not ETs existed. She only said that if she met one, she hoped that she would behave properly. And it was so deep that she said that because before I read that, or if I may have like listened to it, but not have paid attention to that because I was waiting for the rest. But I asked Janae one day, I'm like, if SHTF, anybody who knows what that means, if it hits the fan and worst case, just hypothetical ETs came out, right? They came out, president said, we're trying to, build a relationship and, this and that. And it gave us some context to it. And it was real and it was real information. What would you do? She's like, I don't know. I wouldn't do anything. I was like, here's a question. Here's a weird, interesting question for you. Would you go to work on Monday? She goes, yeah, I would go to work. The bills are still paid. And I said, you know what? It's me that's crazy because I would quit my job right then. She goes, why? What would you want? I said, I don't know. I want an alien job. I want my alien check. And I don't even know what I mean by that, but I just feel like I have such a passion for it that some people are just like, I would try to just go about my day and, and see it and hope that it would interrupt my daily life as little as possible. Like me, I'm like, dude, I'm gonna ask them for a job. I want to work with them. I don't know what I can do. I don't know if there's a test I can take, but I would love the opportunity to kind of establish something there. See if there's something that I can do to be a part of this bigger. I definitely and you asked me a question last time. You said would you want to join the Space Force? And I said hell no. And it's not because I don't understand and respect, especially after reading both books or both sets of books, that there is likely some issue where you want to be able to respond in some matter. You got to respect the fact that even in this this world, we kind of have a checks and balances in the military where we like you got to respect the fact we have our own military and can defend ourselves. But that's not really the way I want to interact with ETs. I'll let somebody else do that. I would be more interested in a more positive, and I can understand the military can do that too, and they probably have been doing that with certain. But I want to be able to control, in some respect, my own destiny when it comes to that, rather than take orders. And that order is how I interact with them. I want a little bit freedom to choose how I interact with them, if I can.
Right. Dude, that'd be crazy. And I think the thing that's so sad is like
I don't know.
I was gonna say I think Hollywood's kind of painted a picture in kind of a bad way. I mean, going back early on from what I remember from the 80s, I mean, there's a movie called Alien Nation. And I mean, District 9 is a huge one.
Right.
I mean, they kind of paint this thing of like, if they were to be with us, this is how it might play out. And it always makes me sad because I'm like, gosh, man, I don't know. I hope there's a movie
It's funny.
Go ahead.
Well, it's funny that you say that because before I would have 100% agree with that before reading these books, but then I started read them, and then I look at these movies and I go, there's a little bit of truth to all these movies, a little bit. I mean, District 9, right? Like if these UFOs crash and the people survive and they don't have any resources and they need something, that's a sad play out. It was almost like a parody. But at first I was like, that could never happen. That could never ever happen. And now I'm going, dude, to some extent, has happened. In fact, in the Norwegian 24 Teeth book, Charles Hall, he claims that a lot of them were killed in the Nazi executions because of their 24 teeth. They were deemed to be inferior. He said he had a book many years ago that that he was able to refer to that pointed to that some of the subjects had 24 teeth, and that's why they were said that they were inferior and they weren't perfect to what the Nazis were trying to get, and they executed them along with a bunch of other people. And that reminds me exclusively of District 9.
Yeah. Where
a certain people are different. Again, we can be calling them demons. If they don't have the means to defend themselves properly, then they could become, the butt of our anger and our prejudice, and there could be a war started, or maybe not an all-out war, but certain groups of ECs, small groups, could want to have some fighting with us. And clearly there has been some fighting. I mean, Philip Corso talks about fighting. So there's a little bit of truth in all of these movies. And I think a lot of these movies have military technical advisors to help condition us for the truth. Even though a lot of these are exaggerating, like I want to actually go back and watch that one Rihanna is in. I can't remember the name. I think it was Battleship. Although it's exaggerated, it's more of like an invasion movie. It still does an important job of telling you how the military looks at this. That's the way they look at this. They want to be able to get lucky and blow some of them out of the sky, and so they want to be able to tell them, you can't just come down here and come have your way with us, because you have to think about a militant mind. They're warriors. They think of every way of respect as in fighting and having a gun and being able to blow you up if you threaten them or their country. They're going to have that attitude with ETs too. It doesn't matter. They're not going to change their state of mind. So I think a lot of these movies have some truth in them. If these things don't actually happen, so maybe these are smaller events, but they also convey the attitude. And Philip Corso clearly has that attitude. He names chapters after the hostile intentions of ETs. There's no real hostile intentions besides the fact that they're invasive in terms of they're poke and prod us, but they haven't shot any of us out of the sky. Actually, they have, but and there's even tales of that happening in the Vietnam War. There's some incredible stories about that. But all these stories become much more believable, not necessarily believable in the sense, but understandable, and I can wrap my mind why this would happen, who would do this, and under what circumstances they would do this, what's going through the mind of the ET. And that's the picture that I couldn't really, the part of the puzzle I couldn't put together before. Now that I can do with this information and reading these books, I can put myself in the mind of an ET going, I don't have to take your crap, right? I'm a person too. I have feelings, I have personality, and that's what I find to be world shaking for me. And I think it's going to eventually be the same for everyone else.
I hope so, man. I hope so.
Dude, we went on. We started at 7, and I told you it would be epic. And I gotta know, do you feel like this was epic? Did I give you some good stuff?
Yeah, dude. You even gave me good stuff the first time we talked. I thought so, man. Dude, I'm still getting it to this day of people just like, they're like, dude, what the hell was going on with Travis Walton, dude? And I'm like, dude, keep listening, man. It's good stuff.
And even Travis Walton said he believes that what happened was just a big misunderstanding, a mistake. And if you think about it, if you read his story, he was abducted after he got out and he walked up to the spaceship. This has been covered exhaustively over and over and over by him. If you watch the movie, at least the part where he gets abducted is accurate. A lot of the other stuff isn't, but he talks about how he thinks it was a mistake because he goes out, he runs out and waves his arms like crazy, and then all the guys in the car, what the hell is wrong with you? And when they abduct him and they take him, you think if this were kids, they might have thought he wanted to play, right? Yeah. Like these are teenagers, and a guy comes running up to my car. If you're 16-year-old, 18-year-old, and you're driving out with your friends, and you got your first car, and some guy is waving his hands at you like, hey, you want to party? You as a young guy, this guy must have drink some beer, have fun with this. Why not? That might have been what it was.
Yeah.
We may be misunderstanding a lot of this, and then when we take into context or take into consideration a lot of these details, we can really have another perspective. And you may not feel the weight of it yet, but after everything that we've discussed today, when it gets in there and it sits in there, and you're going to start getting more information, you're going to feel like an expert. You're going to go, dude, they were probably just kids, bro, and they were just probably doing this, and they probably just didn't talk to their parents, and and but it's going to be practical. It's going to sound weird,
Yeah.
because we're not used to thinking of ETs in such a practical manner as having nuclear families where they have a dad and they have a mom and they have a brother and a sister. That stuff is like way beyond way beyond us ever thinking about it like that. But once we
Whoa.
do,
I
we're gonna
heard
have a lot
the
more fun. We're gonna have a lot more fun. Which
I heard
you hear?
the scream.
Oh yeah, that's the girls. They're enjoying the night.
I love it.
They're enjoying it. Yeah, this was great. We're leaving back to LA tomorrow, back home. But this was a unique experience, and we went up to Key View.
Yeah,
If
man.
anybody knows Joshua Tree, once you get in there, dude, it took us. That's like probably like 20 miles in the Joshua Tree, dude. Like
Whoa.
that was like I was a little scared, like driving, like dude. This is an endless drive. Like once you get into, driving there, first of all, like you're driving from a little bit out of Palm Springs. We're in Desert Hot Springs. I wanted to be a little bit closer so we didn't have to, work so hard to get there. But we drove up there, and then we hop out, we go in the visitor center.
Yeah.
We mess around in there. We get back in. I'm like, let's do it. Let's go in there. So we get in there, right? And they're like $30. I'm like, $30. I better, once I get in here, I better like just $30 to drive up in there. So I was like, dude, I better see some aliens or something, man. So I drive up in there, but the trees were beautiful. It was hot, but you never thought the desert could be beautiful, but it was.
Oh,
It's so
dude.
many trees, so many trees. The Joshua trees, some of them were huge. The way they just looked, and it was just, you couldn't even put a word to it. So then after we get out and we start walking around in the desert, I'm like, hey, I want to go to Key View, because I've been studying the maps. I've been YouTube.
Yeah.
Been seeing what the best parts are. I'm like, I want to do it. I want to go to Key View. I was like, hey, if you guys are down, the girls weren't down. I'm like, but you guys are gonna be down anyway. They're like, no, we want to go home. I'm like, no, we're not going home. We're going to Key View. We hop back in there, drive up there. We drive. It's another 45 minutes. No, not even 45. Let me say 30 minutes. It's because you're not dealing with traffic per se. So you
Right.
can drive nonstop. So it's probably another 30-minute drive, but you're deep in there. You're deep in there. It's just desert, bro. There's just desert. So once we get up there, there's people everywhere, because you made it to the best part when there's just people everywhere.
Yeah.
And we get up there, and all you see is the entire desert. You're 5,000 feet up. The elevation is huge. You see the entire desert area. Just nauseating view, because you just see everything. You get a little dizzy, and took some pictures. And that was like the peak of it for me, because last time we came in from the south. In the south, it doesn't have a lot. You can't really get to unless you keep driving forever. Coming in from the south is not nearly as good, but you come in from the north, it's literally set up for for you to see all the best of what they have for that reserve of Joshua Tree. So it's been an incredible vacation in terms of seeing something that's worth seeing.
Hell yeah. I got to make my way down there, man. I got to do it.
Yeah, man.
I keep making my way up north, up towards Oregon, but I haven't got, dude, I haven't gone anywhere, man. I haven't gone anywhere for a while, except for Utah. But yeah, dude, I didn't even get to really trickle out either. I told Alicia, I was like, dude, we got to go out there and
Mess
sightsee.
around.
Yeah, big time, because
Right.
it's beautiful, man.
Right.
Those mountains, the peaks, holy crap. Dude, I'm walking out of Whole Foods or whatever, and dude, they're there for you always. And it's like, dude, you guys get this view
Right.
all the time. Crazy, man. It looks like a
Yeah,
looks like a
yeah.
Coors Light can. It's unreal.
Right.
It's so cool,
yeah.
man.
And it's not that hot out there. See, it's super hot down here. That's the
Oh,
thing.
I
Like if
bet.
you can take the heat, yeah. But it feels good in Utah, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, dude, it was nice. But dude, supposedly my buddy, or my buddy / coworker that I was with, dude, he was telling me that the pollution gets really bad out there, and I was like, what? He goes, yeah, the pollution from California makes its way out to Utah, and it
Wow.
covers the city. I was like, come on, dude. And he's like hardcore like conspiracy guy and whatever. I was like, all right, dude, cool, yeah, whatever. And then I meet this random dude at because he went inside this. My coworker went inside this brewery in the shop to go buy like a hat or whatever, and it was only one person at a time. It was small. It was like really really small room, and I'm waiting outside, and I talked to this dude, and dude, I don't know if you listened. I ended up telling the story on the last episode I uploaded, but like, dude, they get these weird dust storms, and it reminds me of like
Right.
Mad Max. Dude, it's like really creepy. And I told this
Right.
guy, I was like, dude, what is this? What's going on? And he's just like, oh, the dust, this and that from the mountains, and the winds pick up, and it just covers the city. I was like, whoa, that's crazy. And I go, hey man, are you from here? And he goes, yeah. And I go, hey, what's the deal with the pollution? And he goes, yeah. He goes, yeah, dude. At a certain, he told me the month, dude. I couldn't even remember. Dude, everything he told me, I was just amazed at the fact that my coworker was correct. Because dude was like, yeah,
Right.
it gets really bad. And dude, he went through the whole science of it, and I was like, just dumbfounded, like, I can't believe this dude was right. And, oh my god, dude, I'm thinking that in my head. And
Whistleblower, bro.
dude, and the thing that was so funny was he said that he was working for Uber or whatever it was, this random dude, and he goes, yeah, I picked up this surgeon, and we were just talking this and that. It was like a 30-minute drive, so we were just talking, and then he just goes, yeah, it's just crazy. He said he randomly brought it up, or no, he said he doesn't remember how we got in the conversation, but he's saying like everyone that's from here has black spots in their lungs, like as if they
Wow.
smoked for years. And I was like, no way. He
Wow.
goes, yeah, and he goes, the pollution here gets so bad that it's like worse than it can be worse than Beijing. And I go, shut the hell up, dude. Are you being serious? And this dude, everything I said to this guy, I could have insulted his mom. He would have laughed at me, dude. I was just like I think he was just laughing at my reactions because I was like, come on, dude. I was like over the top,
Right.
like reacting because I was still
Right.
like in awe with the fact that my coworker was right. So, dude, he was just like laughing, losing it. And he goes, dude, yeah, yeah, man, I'm dead serious. It was crazy, bro. Little did I know, this dude lived out in Culver City.
Wow.
And he's like, because I goes, I leave, I go to LA whenever that happens. I was like, oh yeah, I lived in LA for a little bit. I was like, where'd you live? He goes, in Culver City. I was like, bro, that's where I lived. What the hell, dude? And he just lost it even more, man. But
Wow.
but dude, the best part was when my coworker came out of the store. I go, his name is Ronnie. I go, Ronnie, dude, hey, he's telling me the story about the pollution. And he goes, you see, he hits me on the shoulder. He goes, you see, man, I told you. I was like, oh my gosh, dude, this is so crazy. Yeah, man. It was a really fun trip, man. Utah is a very interesting place. You know what? It reminds me of L.A. It reminds me of L.A. Just a lot of like restaurants you would never even heard of. A lot of like local chains that are only within the state. It was beautiful, man. I want to go out there again, dude. It was just really cool. It was an awesome place to.
Were
Unfortunately,
you in Salt Lake?
I was in South Jordan, but I did go out to Salt Lake though. I did go out to
Okay.
Salt Lake I was in the downtown area. We were getting a burger, and oh my god, dude, Mad Max happened. It was
And
crazy.
where is that? Is that south of Salt Lake
Yeah, it's
or
south.
where's that?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's weird. It's
Okay.
like South
Gotcha.
Jordan, and then the second time I went to West Jordan, and that place they're dude, both like just beautiful. Like, and the problem is I can sometimes be a hype job when it comes to like,
Right.
oh my god, this play, and then people are like, oh okay, here goes Johnny. Hear him in his he's just hyping it up. But when my coworker went, dude, everything that I told him, I was like, dude, the people out there are nice. Dude, you're gonna
Right.
the mountains. Oh man, they're so epic when you see them. And then I forgot the last thing I told him, dude, and I can't remember. All the dust storms. And I was telling him about that. He goes, oh, okay, yeah, Mad Max, cool. So, dude, he experienced everything, pretty much all the stuff that I was telling, all the stories at work. So, like,
Uh-huh.
he got me on one with his pollution, and then mine was just like, dude, they have like this sign on the freeway that says, zero deaths, in Salt Lake. Let's keep it that way. Drive safe. And I was like,
Wow.
what the hell? That was when I saw it the first time. Dude, as I'm telling him the story on the freeway, I was like, dude, there was this sign, da da da, and it had this. And then all of a sudden, what comes up? That freaking sign. I was like, dude, there it is. Look at the sign. Look at that. And he starts losing. He goes, what the hell? He goes, dude, that sign would make me want to drive safe. I was like, yeah, dude, that's what I'm
Right.
saying. As we're driving 75 and their speed limit's like 65. Freaking losing it on, dude. It's so funny, man. But yeah, man,
I
it's
know what
place is crazy.
I know what you're talking about because I'm not gonna speak on it, but just wiki Desert Hot Springs, dude, this city is something else. Like, I usually would, like us last year we stayed in La Quinta, but I was like, dude,
Okay.
I want to stay closer to because it took us 45 minutes to get to the south entrance, and I was like, dude, I want to, be able to either meet that to the north or even, and then I was looking at all the places, to Airbnb, and I'm like, I don't want to stay in a resort though. I want something, a little bit more neighborhood, something relaxed, like a house. And I couldn't find anything that was nice. Like, a lot of people have weird rules. Like somebody's like, dude, don't turn up the air conditioner, right? Leave it at where it is, and I better not smell anything. And they was just like all these crazy rules. Like, I'm like,
Wow.
seriously, dude, what are you talking about? And I was like, and then the place I ended up going with, and I was like, oh, this is a nice place, right? And I didn't pay attention much to the city and what it's about, and until like a couple days before we left, and I was like, what? Are you serious? Like, is this really this city? And I was like Googling and I was like YouTubing it, and people were like the truth about Desert Hot Springs and what it's really all about, what you're really gonna get when you get here. Like, dude, I'm so scared, bro.
What the hell?
And but then I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna be off in like the neighborhood area anyway. I'm not gonna be hanging out in the city.
Yeah.
We're gonna be here for like the nature side.
Oh, of
So
course.
we're gonna just stay to ourselves anyway. So it's not gonna be a big deal. But still, so when we're driving into the city, bro, we see like on the road, the main road, just like one main road going through the middle of the city.
Yeah.
Dude, there's like handles and crosses on each side of the road everywhere. Like, and I'm like, what the hell? Right. And Janae's like, yeah, like I hear about a lot of people just get hit on the side of the road and other
Oh,
stuff.
wow.
And I was like, what the hell? And it was like on top of the fact that they have like dust storms, like sandstorms, there's
Right.
sandstorms,
Right.
windy. I'm driving, and because we're in a truck and it's like waving, and it was incredible. And I was like you said, bro, it's like people have challenges and things that you don't even think about being in the main city. Like when you're out there and more of the isolated part, people
Yeah.
embrace living there. And I'm like, dude, and it has a really bad poverty level here. And that's what I was thinking about. I was like, dude, like, how does
Wow.
such a small city have a poverty problem, right? And you were seeing the homeless out there, and it was like LA. You know what I mean? Like there's homeless like right down the street, and then you go into like you walk into like a Whole Foods, and there's nothing but like rich hipsters. Like that's LA for you, right? You like walk outside and there's like, dude, got some change, and then you go like a hipster in a Mercedes, walking with his tweed bag, to go pick up some stuff from Whole Foods. It's such a real polar way of experiencing cities, and that's what I got out here. And that's what kind of sounds like with Utah as far as like dealing with the nature, as far as being weird and the dust storms and the sandstorms. Really weird. And you got to get used to that stuff. And I always like, can I live out here? Because I love the desert. I really do like it. But there's just like there's a lot you got to embrace that you can't. You know what I mean? Like this is permanent, bro. This is not a
Right.
weekend.
No,
This is
right.
permanent. You got to
Right.
be really.
Yeah, dude. You
Ah,
know what's crazy, man, is I bet the winds out there get pretty intense. My dad told me this a long time ago. He's all, if you see the big truck, like the 18 wheelers pull over, and it's, you see a sign that says high winds, if they're pulling over, you better pull over, man. He goes, because if they can't handle the winds, whatever car you're driving doesn't matter. That means your car is gonna get, pushed
right,
out of the way.
right,
And
right.
bro, I'll never forget that. And I remember driving out to I had to drive up to Santa Rosa, which is up near like up north, way north than me. It's about 2 hours away.
Mhm.
It was my first offsite gig, and dude, we went on one of the craziest storms for up north. Like, dude, there was like places that like that flooded out. It was crazy.
Wow.
But what was nuts, dude, was on the way back home. Dude, it was raining, and dude, the winds just picked up, and dude, we're driving like kind of like a one of those budget like a mover truck, and because
Right.
we had to go pick up some hardware, like a rack and some hardware from this customer. And dude, it was dude. My coworker that was driving, dude, he was like, dude, he goes, dude, please grab the wheel with me. And he goes, dude, I have no control over it, dude. It was just like pulling him, dude. It was like turning the whole
Wow.
car, dude. Unreal. And I was like, "Are you being serious?"
Wow.
Because dude, he loves to joke. Goes, "No, dude, I'm being serious, dude, grab it." And I was like, "Oh shoot!" And so, dude, it was just because you have no control over the car, dude. It's freaking the winds are just so heavy. I was like, "Holy crap!" And he started looking at everyone, dude. And everyone's kind of swaying. I was like,
Hmm.
"Oh crap!" And dude, we're on a bridge, and I was like, "Oh, dude, just freaking gun it, dude. Get us the hell out of here." Yeah, dude, it was
Yeah.
crazy, man. Yeah, so those winds, dude. When there's high winds, hell no, I'm good. I am never gonna be brave with something like that. Hell
Right.
no.
Right. But some people don't even know what to do. So, like you said, if you know to pull over, just sit it out for a little while.
Yeah, right. That's the only thing you can do, right?
Yeah, I agree, bro.
Dude, enough said.
Man,
Well,
great,
this is a
great
good.
experience. So, we did. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, dude, this has been good. Freaking
This has
so.
been
Uh,
2 months, 2 months of me studying, and I had to sum up a lot of stuff. I had tons of more details, things that we can go over. And I still want to figure out a way to go into a lot of these details with people who are interested. Since these are, books, I highly recommend people get into reading these books that I mentioned.
yeah,
Again, all of the Millennial Hospitality Part 1 through 6, all good, all
I gotta
fun,
check those out, man.
and like you said, comforting, bro. You can
Yeah,
drink some tea in the middle of the night and still enjoy it, and you
yeah.
don't get that creepiness. I
No,
mean,
not at all.
maybe a little bit, but it's very comforting. And then,
Yeah,
if you want to get serious with the military aspect with it, Philip Corso, dude, this dude is the reason why it affected me so much is that everything that he was saying and he wrote, and this is way back in the 90s. I can't remember what year he actually wrote this book, but he's talking about his experiences in the 60s. It's literally what's going on in the open right now. So everything he was talking about then
wow.
is spilling out. Luis Elizondo formally lodging a complaint. Come on, dude, this is crazy. So, this is gonna be an incredible time. I want to see a way for people to be able to keep. If you have any questions, if you need anything as far as like links or anything, just let me know.
Yeah,
We can you
man.
can always
Send
update
them.
and edit the video as far as
Yeah,
the dis yeah the description. So this is incredible. I did what my mission stayed out to do, and I feel like there's just always more to do, and it felt epic. And if I get another what Cameron Grant says is a download, I'm running to you, bro. I'm running to you. I'm going to tell you, hey, you got to do this again because something else is it's gonna only get deeper. If it gets better than this, my God,
oh, it's
I don't
gonna
know,
get better than this,
but
dude, for
if it gets
sure.
better than this, is I got. Some, I appreciate you letting me borrow your podcast and be
Dude,
a source of information. I
bro,
really do appreciate
it's just been you. I want to see how many times I've talked. I think I only talked like a couple times, man. It's all you, man. You did the same thing last time. I love it.
it.
I love it, dude.
No, man, you helped me out. You helped me out a lot because I was afraid that I wasn't gonna be able to tell the story. But the fact that I had you watch that, it made it so. And then you retained it. That's the thing. Like it didn't go over your head. You retained that information. It was significant, and that shows that everybody should have an opportunity to kind of watch what he said and just
Yeah.
go hard and
Oh yeah.
have fun most of all because it's fun. It's fun.
It's
I'm
really
gonna
fun,
let you
man.
get some rest, man.
You
This is
too,
we're coming
man.
up on 11 o'clock.
I
This
know,
is like
bro.
radio. This is coast to coast tonight, bro. We
Dude.
did like we really did our thing. I'm very proud of the night.
Oh yeah.
Yet again, man, I appreciate the time.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thank you for being on again. You're
Man,
my
this is
my comeback guest, dude. That's awesome. My first one. It's awesome.
man. So the Zinco Zone, man. This is the podcast of the
This is
year
it,
for
dude.
me.
Oh man. We gotta have another one. We gotta have a what do you know about Travis Walton part 3? Oh no, I gotta change the
Man,
name. Oh no, it's not about Travis.
yeah.
Oh man.
This one is dude.
Should be
I'll let you pick the. I called it I gave it two names when I was writing this: the Great Extrapolation and two your practical guide to ETs. Work with that, man. Figure something out, man, because I think this is really sums up what we just did today.
all right. I'll work with something.
Thank you, brother.
All right, man.
I
Be good.
appreciate it.
Enjoy the rest of your
All
vacation.
right. Be safe. Thank you very
All right, man.
much.
You too.
Later, brother.
Later.